out of power on their own?
Yeah, they'll just shut
Okay.
Well, I mean, they'll shut down if you don't.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Brainerd School Board to order. I want to welcome you all. As I look out, as you face me, I see the right on the right, the left on the left, but you all look the same. You know, and that's good. And I also see some people that the right has sat over here and vice versa, no one's fighting. So I really appreciate that. I would like it to be civil tonight. I set out a board where on that, it says love each other deeply. It's from 2 Peter 4:8. And I think that we all have to love each other. You know, it's, so tonight, we're gonna hold on to public comment for just now. We have two presenters, Damian Williams.
You need to
Oh, I'm sorry.
call and pledge of allegiance. Yeah,
I got ahead of myself, sorry.
that's all right.
Okay, roll call, please.
Charles Blacklands,
Here.
Kevin Boyles,
Here.
Tom Hagelin,
Here.
Ruth Nelson,
Here.
Bob Nystrom,
Here.
Jana Shogren,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have to make an announcement. This meeting of the Brainerd School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D.021. Because we're a public meeting, we are allowing people to monitor this meeting from a remote location by watching us on YouTube Live. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as is reasonably possible. Okay, having said that, approval of the agenda as presented amended. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by
Hagelin.
Tom Hagelin?
Director Hagelin, seconded by Director Blacklands.
Boyles?
Or Boyles, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Next, district recognitions.
All right, thank you, Chair Nystrom. Congratulations to the Warrior track and field athletes who qualified for the Minnesota State High School League Tournament, which was held on June 19th, 2021. Brenna Deason, Molly Hagley, Maya Nelson, Maddie Gens, Kate Statham, Hannah Kahi, Dylan Gross, Brandon Stark, Thomas Rule, Braden Bastian, and Ethan Klisch. All of the athletes medaled, and the results are as follows. Dylan Gross, the shot put, 6th place with 51 feet, 3/4 inch. The 4x8 meter relay with Braden Bastian, Brandon Stark, Ethan Klisch, and Thomas Rule took 6th place with 8 minutes, 4.35 seconds. Hannah Cowie, shot put, 6th place, 38 feet, 2.5 inches. The discus, 7th place, 120 feet, 8 inches. Brenna Deason, also in the 100-meter dash, took 8th place in 12.29 seconds. And the pole vault, she took 12th place at 10 feet. The 4x100-meter relay with Molly Hagley, Maya Nelson, Madison Gens, and Brenna Deason took 3rd place at 48.83 seconds. Congratulations to the Warrior track and field athletes. Congratulations also to the Warrior golfers, Anna Krieger, who placed 7th place with a score of 149 at the Minnesota State High School League State Tournament. Izzy Olson, who placed 23rd with a score of 160. Katie Foley, who placed 31st with a score of 163, and Eric Stokeson, who placed 16th with a score of 146. Congratulations to our Warrior athletes. That's all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, next we're going to do our two presenters. Damian Williams, are you in the bill? Damian?
Heidi's grabbing him. He's in the hallway.
We're going to do
Okay.
the presentations first, yeah.
representative was?
Deanne Berry
Okay.
with the center.
Okay. Yeah, as long as we're waiting here, is Deanne Berry here? Oh,
Oh,
representatives of
representing
Deanne
her.
Berry.
Great.
Come on up.
There's Damien and Scott too.
They're here now.
No, you guys gotta wait. So I asked these guys to come up.
You might want to let our public know what we're doing.
Okay, and for the public listening, we are bringing up the speakers that would have talked to us tonight. A little out of order, but to respect their time. Hello,
Hi.
welcome.
We are not Deanne. Deanne is not here tonight.
Those are big shoes to fill.
I'm Kathy Tusa. This is Nick Reindl. Nick will start, I think.
Okay,
Well, we're here, obviously, to present to the board the plant sale results that we had utilizing the greenhouse that's out on the farm. We couldn't do it without it. We start, Kathy with the group, start seeding in mid-February from the plant room in the center. And then in mid-March, we move out to the greenhouse. I rustle up the soil. We use about 62 cubic foot bags of potting soil, several thousand pots, and about a cubic yard of black dirt for the perennials that we use. So all in all, we generate over 6,000 plants for the annual sale. Kathy will give a little breakdown on that.
Starting from seed, we always do tomatoes and herbs and peppers, and we had over 1,000 tomatoes, almost 1,000 herbs this year. Flowers, cole crops, we did strawberry baskets and floral baskets. We had 131 of those this year. And I estimated, we always think that we're going to keep good track of how many volunteers and how many hours, and we have sign-in sheets at the greenhouse. And this lasted until about the last 6 or 7 days, and we ran out of paper, and it never got done. And that's when we were the busiest. But I'm thinking an estimate of about 800 hours goes into this. And we had a core group of about 10 people, and probably another 10 to 15 help out when we moved the plants to town for the sale. And of all those plants, when our sale was over, Deanne always contacts some young men from a group home that help us with the heavy moving. And we let them come and take whatever they want, and she contacts a couple of nursing homes, and they come and take. And the last was a teen challenge. So some of the plants went there, and at the very end, Nick and I bagged up and composted, and I kept all the little stakes that are in the pots and counted them up, and we threw away 380 plants out of the 6,000 plus that we planted, which is pretty good, I think. The center is really important to us. We're both on the board. We're on the membership committee. Membership has gone down, of course, because of COVID, but in the last few months, it's really picking up. And our plant sale is the second highest fundraiser that we have. The first, of course, is the donuts. We brought you a couple of samples over there. And that's the biggest. But the plant sale is very important, and it keeps a lot of people happy gardening when they can't garden at home anymore because they're in senior living or whatever. So it's a wonderful thing. And we had, this year we also had, and I think we have the last few years, I don't know if we've ever mentioned it, but some kids from the Key Club came and helped us during the sale, which is really kind of fun because a lot of us don't have our grandchildren close by, so we don't get to rub elbows with the kids. And they help our shoppers, they carry things to the car, they help them find plants and things. So that was great. So bottom line, we're grateful for the support from community because we do get some community help, and for being able to use the facility out there. We're hopeful that we can do it again next year, which is why we're here tonight. And I know Nick wanted to mention.
Oh, yeah, we wanted to thank especially Tim and district maintenance, or Tim out there, and Jim for the buildings is very responsive. As soon as we call, he's taking care of any questions we have. And I think we called him once this year, just as we were getting started. There was a little problem with the heater, got it fixed, and we didn't need to bother him anymore. So it's been a wonderful facility for our use. And I think just when we start with 1,000 tomatoes and you run a 3-day sale and you end up with 8 plants left at the end of 3 days, it's like, wow. and those 8 eventually sold too. So we didn't throw any tomatoes away out of it. It was pretty amazing. So anyway, thank you.
So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Are there any questions?
Well, thank you for doing this year after year. It's a nice for the community. Appreciate it.
You're making me hungry with all your wonderful strawberries and tomatoes. I was looking at eating supper before, so now then you fall through with donuts. So
Yes.
very exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect.
Be the greatest board meeting ever.
Yeah, please.
Do you want to take action on this or later?
Let's do it later.
And just so you know, we're gonna set up another room in 200,
Okay,
just because of the hallway and they're having trouble hearing. So we're gonna move the group to 200.
Oh, okay.
perfect.
Here's some shuffling, that's what's happening.
Okay.
Okay?
Bells, you can just place your donuts over there.
Yeah.
Sit there.
I'd say give them
There you go.
Yeah.
I can,
The donuts are for all.
Hey, Janet, do you know if Janet, do you have Mark's PDF for the SD approval?
Yeah, no.
Can't get the PDF to pull up these.
Oh, you couldn't?
No, it's
But they have in their board book?
they have it.
Okay.
I
Okay.
do have.
Charles, you have kind of a sad look on your face.
I just watched.
You thought Bob was giving you a donut.
I don't think I didn't see a little tear that just came out of your
I
eye.
thought the box was coming here. It pivoted that way. It didn't work, huh? Okay. All right, well, good evening. We have a full house tonight, so.
You don't mind going early, do you?
No, not at all. I was totally surprised. I was down in the lower level watching on YouTube, so I was like, all of a sudden you called my name, like, what? All right, so here's our Brainerd Public Schools bond improvements update for May 24th, 2021. We have project update. We're gonna look for approval for the high school science casework approval. Also,
Please, quiet,
South Campus
so we can
sports
hear our
flooring
speaker.
and equipment approval. And then we're also going to review the SD packet, which is in your board books for the Brainerd Learning Center. Brainerd High School, Scott Whittemore.
All right, down in Area 10, which is our pool building, so kind of dropped off areas 1, 2, 3, because those are all done. We're just knocking out punch lists and everything on the north side. Our lap pool, as you can see in the picture there, we're going to be shooting that tomorrow with concrete. We'll get that wrapped up this week, and starting next week, we're going to dig the diving well. So far, everything's going right on schedule, so hoping to keep up with that. Area 6, they did tie in our Ansel systems today, so those are completed. We just have one fire suppression tie-in to do, which we're looking to do later this week, and then that area is complete, which is all of our Fax 1, Fax 2 kitchens, and then the a la carte and Warrior Warehouse, and then the engineering and CAD lab. Our greenhouse structure's up. Most of the, I forget what the stuff's called now, but it's light glass but not, has been put on. We're waiting on our mechanical evaporators, so they'll wrap up in the next day or two, be gone. We'll finish setting our evaporator pads, and then they'll come back a week later to finish up. We are anticipating being done by the end of July on that. Area 7, we're just down to the wood shop and storage spaces, so we got to put flooring in the storage spaces and finish up our HVAC rough ends in, well, not even rough ends, but our dust collector system tie-in for our wood shop, and that area is complete. Area 9, which is the Ox Gym, all the precast is up, the roof is in. We are pouring starting tomorrow on the lower levels, and then with the goal to have the mid deck poured out by the end of the week. So everything there is going very well as well. That leads me to the Sourcewell Science casework. So in your board books, Sourcewell proposal 84181 through Sourcewell Contracting for the science casework as part of the A-Wing redesign project for $779,536, and that is about $180,000 less than what we were budgeting on it. So,
That's great.
questions on that?
And that is being purchased through Sourcewell.
Purchased through Sourcewell, that's correct. Okay, hearing none. Move on to South Campus. So our main building demolition, which is the eastern 42,000 square feet of the building, has been demolished. Our below grade demolition started last week. We're about 50% complete on that. Area A, the remaining areas are our interior remodel spaces A through E, which make up our 72,000 square feet of remodel. So selected demolitions complete, underground plumbing rough-ins. It should be complete by the end of this week, so it's about a month ahead of schedule. Area B, selected demolition is complete. Again, we're tracking about a month ahead of schedule there. Area C, 75% complete. The same, we're tracking about a month ahead there. Area D, well, starting next week means this week, because I wrote this last week. So it started on Monday. We're going through there. We're getting all the HVAC down on some of that selective demolition, masonry partitions. Area E, we're about 50% complete. Mainly the ceilings have come out. And so far, we're not finding anything too crazy or outside the norm. A little bit of unknown ACM materials, so asbestos-containing materials, that are being abated currently. So even with that little bit of an interference, it hasn't affected us at all. So things are going good. Sports flooring and equipment proposal. So again, through the Sourcewell contracted services for South Campus, we had included the playground equipment, gym flooring, and athletic equipment, and this is the athletic equipment and the sports flooring for that. So that's Sourcewell proposal 84191 to H2I for $135,150.
What
That's
was
within
the
our
number?
budget.
Say the number again.
135,150.
And Scott, that's within our budget too.
That was within our budget for the Sourcewell contracted items. That's correct. No other questions? That's it for North and South Campus.
All right, thanks, Scott. Moving on, Warrior Early Learning Center. We're working on the final seating, punch list work. There's a few items left. Commissioning. We did have full occupancy on 6/22, and the building is being used now, so good news. So, and we've got a lot of rain now, so hopefully the grass will start to grow. Garfield Elementary, working on interior CMU walls, underground plumbing throughout. In fact, in the tour today, we had a lot of piles of dirt and a lot of open spaces there for that. Getting ready to re-pour those hopefully here later this week. Footings and foundations are installed at the canopy, and they've started the structural steel. Interior steel stud framing has started. Worked on spray foam at the parapets, roofing, roof wood blocking. Excavation at the new gym has taken place. We've actually demoed the wall on the gym, so now we have a temporary enclosure in place and getting that work started. So exciting. Mechanical rough-ins are going on throughout, getting prepared for drywall. So a lot of good progress, lots happening, a lot of guys on site, so lots going on. Lowell Elementary, working on wall and ceiling demo that is completed. Wall framing and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough-ins are all taking place on all 3 levels. We're also working at the cafeteria area, getting structural steel installed. Going to be working on some underground rough-ins and getting that slab poured in place over that structural deck. Steel erection, I mentioned that. Foundation systems have started at the loading dock, and then painting and tile are mobilizing, and we're going to be working on bathrooms on the lower level, trying to start getting an early start on that tile work. They're also going to be working on drywall work in the hallway spaces, so we can just start with our mechanical and low voltage rough-ins. So, again, lots of work is taking place. So,
Damian, do you know what we're looking at in each of these pictures?
yeah. So the top left picture, that would be the main level corridor. The right-hand picture is the footings for the dumpster enclosure. The lower level picture is second floor framing, and the right side is the structural steel for the cafeteria, kitchen area.
So it's all basically emptied. I'm sorry I missed the tour today, but.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, it's it looks. We're in, of course, heavy construction stage. You know, this is the time when I take Tom Hagelin in and he says, "You're really going to have this done for school start?" And we say, "Yes, sir, we will." So.
Did you deliver one of the old lunch tables to Tom's house?
Nope. No, we did not.
Thought you had some fond memories of those.
No. Finger pictures.
Riverside Elementary, steels erected in the kitchen area. Underground plumbing activities are happening for the kitchen. We're working on the masonry work at the new, what do I want to call it, the receiving area. Doing a lot of CMU infills. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough-ins are happening everywhere. Masonry has started. Painting and acoustic ceilings are starting this week. So a lot of those classrooms we were able to turn those pretty fast. So we're going to start getting that work completed on the south end of the building. So again, lots of work happening on this project as well. So any questions with those projects? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to bring in Mark Needham and Mike England. Mark Needham from ICS and Mike England from Widseth to present the SDs for Parent Learning Center.
You guys didn't bring donuts.
The bar's been set pretty high.
Yeah, I see that. Next time.
Good evening. I'm Mark with ICS, and Michael, do yours?
Hi, Mike Anglin with Widseth.
Just here presenting on the Brainerd Learning Center and the schematic design presentation. We'll be looking to move into design development after this and get board action on it. So design narrative, we'll start with that. Basically broke down into 5 different areas. Was the safe and secure entrance, the bathroom fixture update, family and consumer science labs, the kitchen and student commons areas, and then finish updates. And we'll go to a map here, and Mike will give us a better idea of what to expect.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. We've had a really great design process, especially with the user groups, in this case with Jessica. And we've also had great meetings with Alyssa, as well as we've taken a look at the cafeteria and in those spaces as well. So as Mark laid out, we had certain objectives, and really this building is lending itself really well to the remodel that we have presented, or that we're presenting now. And indicated in the blue shaded area, we're depending on the east entrance for the secured entrance. We are still maintaining the west entrance that you see on the right-hand side there, and that's primarily for exit only, but also somebody with a badge, or it could still be a controlled access point, but that will primarily be for exiting. And so it worked out really well. Some of the efficiencies of all the other secured entrances we were able to apply to this design, and so that's working out very well. One of the areas that we were really excited about is, as you can see in the green area there with some of the furniture that is shown there, that's a new commons area. So we've been able to repurpose and really take a look at that square footage that now has become available. And so what we were able to do is create a new learning commons in that area, and that's also can be used for cafeteria space as well. And also taking a look at it from the administrative side, we've created a specific office that's located in the orange area, and so there's now direct supervision there and a visual connection. As you can see along the left hand or the center portion of the plan with the green shaded area, that's where we've taken a look at opening that up. And so now the kitchen area, there's a larger serving, and so the flow through there with students is really going to be great. And then also just in the lower right-hand corner, so that would be the southwest corner of the building, we've incorporated 2 FACS labs, and then also what we're doing is having kind of an in-home setting. And so that'll really be great for teaching students just some basic skills that they can apply to their home life. So Again, the building is just really lending itself very nicely to the reprogramming of the west space there. Again, that became available. And so working together with Obernell and then also with Mark, of course, we're happy with, I think, where we're sitting at from a budget standpoint as well. But design-wise, just working with user groups has just been a wonderful experience, and we're really happy with where we're at. Here for any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, Janet, I know I'm gonna mess this up and I apologize. Yep, and that is the end of the presentation of that. And all the board book has the appendices with the design narratives, the in detail design narratives, and then the schematic design estimate with it as well.
Okay.
Does the board have any questions that you think you may have of them before we take action, which would be in a little bit? Unless you wanted to take action now so that you could ask questions.
Is the flooring, again, consistent with the other schools?
Yeah, the athletic flooring specifically, I'm assuming. Yep. So yeah, in that space, it's a carpet now, and they'll replace the carpet with athletic flooring, just like you've seen elsewhere.
But that space will stay just exactly the way it is, except for the floor, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Great.
Anything else? Any other questions? Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Okay. Next, we're going to go to public input. And 2 weeks ago, we had a couple speakers that actually threatened us. We had, is Mr. Dunlap in the audience? Andy Dunlap?
It's not saying anything. Yeah.
Okay. I just ask for respect. No kind of threats, because technically threats are against the school board and could come into harm. And so I would appreciate everyone being kind in their comments, respectful. And so I have to read this. Some of you may be planning to address an issue during the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. We welcome your comments. However, we want to remind all members of the public that they must comply with Board Policy 206. Consistent with that policy, the following limitations will apply during tonight's public comment period. 1, if we have a large number of individuals who want to make comments, the school board may enforce a 3-minute limit on each person so that everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. And because we have a lot of people that want to speak tonight, we are going to enforce that. Heidi Hahn, who is standing over there, she actually will have a timer, and then she'll remind you when you have 30 seconds left. Okay? And then you also have to sign the card that Heidi has. During the public comment session, community members may not make complaints or allegations against students or employees and may not discuss data on students. 3, if you're interested in making a complaint or allegations against a student or an employee, we would encourage you to follow Policy 2016 and submit the complaint or allegations in writing. You may submit written complaints to Superintendent Larson. 4, this 3-minute public comment period is for public comment only. There will be no verbal interaction with the Board of Education or Superintendent of Schools.
Better late than never. You asked for my name, I mean, you called.
Oh, yeah, do you want to speak?
Sure, I would.
Okay, but...
Does he have a card?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't know why you said my name, but.
I said your name, Andy, because I don't think you meant it. But when you said you wanted to pour hot burning coals on us, that was a threat.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't mean it as a threat. It's
And I know
biblical
you,
thing.
I know that you didn't mean it, but, you know, I have to protect the safety of everyone at this table.
I'm no threat. It's a biblical thing. Anybody that knows God knows what I'm talking about. And, you know, sorry if you were offended, like I'm gonna hurt you. I'm not.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, when Proverbs 25:12 was written, it was about 3,000 years ago with David and Solomon. And
Church, separation of church and state. Yeah.
can I talk to you later?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
Okay.
your first comment, Mark Olson. And then just so you all know, there's 2 microphones. You can sit, that microphone's on. If you prefer to stand, we just want to make sure we test it. Test it, Mark.
Hello. Yeah, it's on. It's on. Good. Thank you. Thank you, school board, for allowing us to speak. Yeah, it's awful nice of you. Why I'm here, 2 weeks ago, I spoke on critical race theory. And I'm here for the same subject, but when school, because I ran for the school board in 2006, when most school board people run, they say they're all about the children. Well, let's find out if we're all about the children. $340 million, we just listened to. It's not working.
Yeah, I want to be able to hear them.
Do I get a time out?
It's paused, don't worry.
I could hear you fine, so, yeah.
Does this one sound better, audience? It's still not sounding better.
How about if
Should I
they
sit
sit?
down?
Yes.
Sorry about
No, that's all right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hello.
Hear you.
Okay, so I was going to read some stuff, but I appreciate you guys allowing the community to speak over issues that are obviously concerning us. And as I told you 2 weeks ago, there would be people coming because of all the national media, and we know what's going on this critical race theory, and it's being implemented in many places, and I'm here to say we are totally against it. When we, in the critical race theory, when students of a race are told that they are not as good as another race, that's reverse racism. Come on, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that stuff out. So, and then in the last couple weeks, I also learned something about a book called It's Perfectly Normal. And that was a book on sex education back in 2019, where the Minnesota legislature was pushing. I hope it's not in our school district. I have a request form here following the Minnesota Data Practice Act that I'm going to give to you, Bob,
Okay.
for a request of information. And that's it. I'm just here to say that we are totally against critical race theory. And it comes in a lot of forms. The last thing I want to quote a couple guys. John Adams, our Constitution was made only for a moral and a religious people. It is wholly inadequate to a government of any other. Think about that. Ronald Reagan, government's first duty is to protect people, not to run their lives. The most important, Jesus said, for what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? So, thanks for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Critical race theory has been an academic discipline for many decades in modern America. Whether we like it or not, whether we responsibly teach all or part of it or not, it's here. Will we choose ignorance or teach knowledge? James Baldwin wrote, "Those who are still trapped in a history they do not understand cannot be released from it." It was recently said that we should teach reading, writing, and arithmetic and stop there. If we did that, then all of our students would have only an elementary school education and learn no mature critical thinking skills about anything, including the history of race in America. We should teach our children to read as part of an education readying them for life in modern America, which is to say, to read and to think critically. And we should not ban books or subjects containing what may be uncomfortable. Students should critically read, discuss, and study books like Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee and Indian History of the American West. We also should teach our children to write and think critically. And we should not ban what can be written about, including arguably uncomfortable subjects such as CRT. We should teach writing skills like those of Martin Luther King Jr. in his letter from a Birmingham jail, "I have a dream," and teach to write critically, including to attack CRT foundations. And we should teach our children to think critically about arithmetic's numbers and their meaning. There have been proportionately few people of color in the history of Brainerd Public Schools. However, the arithmetic of this century is one of future increasingly defined by people of color. Brainerd Public Schools should teach about race in a manner responsible for the 21st century, using learning tools like CRT. I recently read that Brainerd Public Schools strives to provide our students with the building blocks for success: critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and creative thinking skills. Brainerd Public Schools has a rich and strong tradition for being a dynamic, forward-visioning center for excellence. The author was Superintendent Lane Larson. Be dynamic, be forward-visioning. Do not shy away from offering our students challenging subjects like CRT. CRT cannot be head in the sand avoided, but instead should be taught, not indoctrinated, in the America which belongs to all of us. In her inaugural poem, Amanda Gorman wrote that there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it, and we are. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Take that, Sam. Thanks. Someone else?
Marty Halverson next.
Oh, she's gonna.
My name is Marty Halverson, and I'm a resident of School District 181, a retired Lutheran clergy, a retired marriage and family therapist, and a lifelong educator at the postgraduate level. Although those facts are important, the most pertinent learning that I bring to the issues today is that my wife and I adopted a minority child at the age of 3 months. We raised her with love, observed her graduate from high school, college, and receive a master's degree. The schools that she attended gave her an education rich in diversity and inclusion. The reason I mention this is because there seems to be a concerted effort to limit or eliminate factual history which impacts people of color. Education has been an integral part of my life, having taught at the postgraduate level for over 40 years. When I think of education, words such as curiosity, openness, exploration, and seeking facts come to mind. Words like fear, intimidation, and bullying are not part of what I consider to be a quality educational milieu. Having said that, I want to thank you as school board members for addressing the difficult issues of inclusion in the Brainerd School District with transparency. I know your job is demanding, as my father was the chair of this very school board when many of the elementary schools were built. It's my hope and encouragement that as you consider further education and curriculum issues, that you will do so choosing what is right versus what is expedient. An openness to exploring our racial history in an academic setting will provide our students with more tools to face an increasingly complex society. Integration and collaboration are facts of our current life. The more we can educationally face these concerns, the more we will support a society that is healthy versus one that is divided. If I were to offer a prayer today, it would be a prayer of thankfulness for your work. It would be a prayer of courage for the issues that you will face, and it would be a prayer of equality, for all of us are equal. And finally, it would be a prayer for peace for those who find these issues too difficult to deal with. I thank you for listening to me today. If I can be of any further use to you in any way, I'm open to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halverson.
Terry Frovick? Not sure if I said your last name correct, Terry, I apologize.
Thank you. My name is Terry Frovick. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor. I've been in this area since 2011, live up in Lake Shore. I've done some volunteer work in our community. Now I am a trained facilitator for Lakes Area Restorative Justice, among other facilitators. But currently I am working with a cohort of friends and kind of a community-based organization called People for Racial Justice. We are advocating for racial justice by the help of God. And so I want to thank, first of all, you for listening to our concerns about the cancellation of the presentation that was scheduled by Professor Timothy Linsmeyer. And in particular, I want to say that educational theory and educational training are things we should not be afraid of. It's education. So my reason for speaking tonight is to offer a word of appreciation and thanks for the ways in which the school board and the administration can provide the best possible continuing education for your teaching staff. In particular, I really would like to urge you to equip your staff with a proactive response to any student who is unable to succeed for issues such as physical or mental disability, race issues, sexual orientation, or even religious affiliation. And in that context, I want to share with you a story. Jesus often taught by telling parables. And so here's a short story to kind of sum up what I think we need to be about as teachers in our school district. So there was this young boy, 7 years old, always wanted a puppy. And so he went into a hardware store. There he had, the clerk had a dog that had 5 puppies. 4 of them came out and the boy said, oh, look at these. And then he saw this last dog limping out of the back room. And he said, how much is that dog? And the clerk said, oh, son, you don't want that dog. When he was born, he didn't have a hip socket on his right side. No, he said, how much is that puppy? He said, well, $20. So the boy reached into his pocket. He said, I will give you $2.37 every week until he's paid for in full. So he handed the money and he said, I just know that, oh, as he pulled his money out, his pant leg pulled up, and the clerk saw that he had a brace on his ankle all the way to his knee. And he said, I just know that puppy needs somebody who understands. It's that kind of God who has come to us in Christ to say to each one of us who are like that puppy, we need somebody to understand us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Frovick.
Rick Belt?
My name is Rick Felt. I'm a proud Army veteran, and I come here to speak about what critical race theory really teaches. There's 9 different components of critical race theory, and this is a synopsis of all 9 areas. Number 1, one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. Number 2, the United States is fundamentally racist or sexist. Number 3, an individual by virtue of his or her own race or sex is inherently racist or sexist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Number 4, an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race. Number 5, members of one race or sex should not and cannot attempt to treat others without respect to race or sex. Number 6, an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex. Let me repeat that again. An individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex. An individual, number 7, an individual by virtue of his or her race or sex bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of that same race or sex. Number 8, an individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. And finally, number 9 teaches, meritocracy or traits such as a hard work ethic are racist or sexist. A hard work ethic is racist or sexist, or were created by a particular race to oppress another race. The term divisive concepts also includes any other form of race or sex stereotyping or any other form of race or sex scapegoating. This particular form of teaching, I firmly believe, goes against the Constitution and should be declared as academic fraud, because there is no particular scientific research that they can actually say that this theory comes from. When we tear down the moral fabric of our youth, we will reap the lawless abandon of any authority. Why does the brain, and then we as a society of labels now and no longer look at all men created equal. We would rather place labels on someone and say that you're racist or sexist. We are all Americans and we all bleed red. And we should be patriots of this phenomenal country that we live in. Critical thinking stops when we no longer teach both sides of an issue and allow our children to come to their own conclusion. And in closing, I would like to know why the Brainerd High School ranks in the bottom 50%. I appreciate all the money and all the hard work for having fancy buildings and everything, but when our kids graduate school and they can't even have proficiency in reading and writing, we need to take a look at that. The elementary school, one of them ranks in the top 5%, and the other elementary school ranks in the top 10%. I applaud that. But we really need to look at the high school. If I was on the board member, I'd be absolutely ashamed of being on a board and see that.
That's enough. That's enough. First of all, the 50% is from a school that is not the same. Not all children are created equal. Okay, so we have some learners that are,
Thank you.
have hard learning ability. So.
Well,
and that's all I'm going to say. So I know you're passionate. Okay.
And then we need to stick to the 3 minutes.
Wow.
I'm Becky Twomley, and I'm here tonight as a parent of BHS graduates and also as the director of We Are, a local nonprofit, and I'm speaking on behalf of the We Are staff and the We Are board. We're concerned about the recent decision to cancel the teacher in-service on equity and dismayed by follow-up comments at the recent school board meeting as reported in the dispatch. I'd like to share with you some of the things that we've learned while working with youth and young adults in the Brainerd Lakes community. These are things that students have shared with us. School is not always a safe space for all students. Students are exposed to transphobic, homophobic, and racist comments. Students may not conform to other standards, but they do want to fit in. Students want a safe place to discuss hard subjects, and they want opportunities to talk. Students are concerned about their mental health and that of their peers. And students want help dealing with peer pressure and bullying. We must work together to meet the needs of all students. In a school district and a community that we can be proud of, advancing equity is not negotiable. Embracing diversity is not negotiable, and inclusive policies are not negotiable. School districts have long been the champions for equity. They don't give each student a pencil and say, do your best. Administrators and teachers ask, have you had breakfast today? Do you need more time to take a test? Tutoring? Do students feel welcome and safe in their classroom? Can they share their viewpoints? And importantly, do they learn to respect the viewpoints of others? We are here to support the district's efforts to advance training and policies around equity, diversity, and inclusion. Less judgment, more empathy. All of our students deserve a safe and supportive environment, and it's up to those in power to ensure that. Students deserve to learn the truth. Our history has shaped our society, including our laws, our policies around education, employment, housing, and healthcare. Fostering a supportive environment for students includes cultivating a better understanding of our history. We must do better. Brainerd Public Schools, in partnership with the community, will ensure all students achieve their individual potential by providing the highest quality programs and resources to prepare learners for an ever-changing global society. That is the mission statement for ISD 181. We urge you to rise above the rhetoric. Do not take the bait. This is not about critical race theory or the definition of equity.
Becky,
let's prepare our students for an ever-changing global society, and let's stay focused on the mission. We stand here with you in support of your mission and support of your efforts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Ann Johnson. Ann Johnson.
I'm here. I'll just ditto her.
You're gonna ditto the Okay, moving on.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Sally Jacobson. Who's farther down the list?
I'm Sally Jacobson, live in unorganized territory, and have had 3 kids that have gone through the Brainerd Public School System. I was concerned when I read the article in the Dispatch from the board meeting 2 weeks ago. As a committed Christian, as I believe all of you are too, I'm concerned that the community members were making threatening comments toward you in the name of Christianity, and I felt that I needed to speak up. I can only imagine what other emails and messages you've had to endure, and I am truly sorry. I want you to know that there are many more people in this community that support you than are against you. As a substitute teacher in this district for 20 years, I know that school board members, teachers, and administrators have the best interest of the children of this community in their hearts when they are making decisions. I believe that those that are riled up about critical race theory don't understand that it isn't about communism or teaching kids to hate their white skin. It was originally an examination that started in the 1970s of laws, both past and current, and how they have had far-reaching effects on banking industry, on housing, education, medical, and the judicial system. Those that are threatening you are not concerned parents, but are rather doing it for political gain, being coached by right-wing think tanks and conservative media that want to discredit local school boards. NBC News this week reported that there are now at least 165 local and national groups that are trying to disrupt school board meetings or block lessons on race and gender. And looking around here, they are being successful here and across the country. It is my understanding that there have not been changes to the way history and social studies is being taught in the district right now. and that any changes will go through a rigorous scrutiny with the curriculum committee. I ask that you stay that course and continue to teach history along with critical thinking, and you don't be swayed by the latest fear-based politics. I truly thank each and every one of you for the excellent work that you do for the Brainerd Lakes community.
Thank you, Sally.
Leanne Wakasha.
Good evening. My name is Leanne Wojtaszek. Leanne Wojtaszek is my English name. Nijagabawik Indigenous Makwandude. I am Anishinaabe from Minnesota. This is my territory. Thank you for this time and this space today. I appreciate you, each and every one of you. I appreciate all of you parents who are here for the same concern as myself, our children. I also thought I was farther down the list. I'm not real good at public speaking, so I made notes. They're here somewhere, I promise you. Everyone's throwing quotes, so I will do the same. I'm a leader, not a follower. However, I like this quote very much. If engagement is the first step in healing, then the second is pure, unadulterated struggle. We will never achieve racial healing if we do not confront one another, take risks, say all the things we are not supposed to say in mixed company. This is a quote by Harlan Dalton, a professor of law at Yale Law School. First and foremost, we are here under one common bond, the interest of our children. I'm not just here for my children, but I'm here for your children, your grandchildren, all of you. Messages need to be said rather than evaded. I think we all know what CRT is and where it came from. And CRT aspires to empower voices, perspectives that have been marginalized, laws, legal rights formed to help those who in the past have been considered minorities. I don't like to be considered a minority myself, because even though I was not given the same equal rights as a lot of people in this room, I have overcome a lot of that. However, there's a commonwealth to be gained here in the true history that's taught to the children in this district. With racial disparities being a primary focus, it's more important now to ensure we're taking racial equalities and critical quantitative approach to this, allowing models to be transparent. Experience through life diversity, limiting is hindering growth. We're not here to make white kids feel bad for being white. It's not their fault what their ancestors did, but we are trying to bring change.
Ma'am, I'm sorry,
Do
I
not
have to
wish to
enforce the
create-
3-minute rule. I'm sorry.
We do not wish to create hate. We do bring forth change. Creating awareness is creating change. Part of the Minnesota law dictates that the curriculum shall include the contributions of the indigenous people of this land.
The 3 minutes, I'm sorry, the 3 minutes is over. I have to enforce it, I'm sorry. We have a lot of people here, but thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Next, we have Kevin. The last name is Latte, did I say it right?
Latte, close.
I apologize for all my mispronunciations.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Chair and the board. My name is Kevin Latte. I'm a resident of Brainerd. And I guess I don't really know where some of the some of the explanations of critical race theory that you've heard tonight came from. I guess it's very not consistent with my understanding and my studying of it. But critical race theory has two fundamental truths, or it's based on sort of two fundamental truths, and one is that race is a social construction. It's not based on biology. There's no evidence that beyond skin color and facial features, it doesn't go deeper than that, right? But then second, yet race has consequences. And that the way that someone experiences life hinges in some ways on race. Whether or not somebody is offered a loan, whether or not someone is offered a job. In fact, there's a study from Milwaukee in which people with the same exact education level, same exact amount of experience, the white person with a criminal record was more likely to be offered a job than a black person. And it has real consequences. It came out in the 70s and 80s when lawyers were trying to make sense of these two competing ideas, right? Race is not real, not biological, yet there's consequences to it. And so this impacts students and is already impacting their lives. They know it, and sometimes we choose to ignore it. Right, suspension is, there's a higher rate of suspension for students of color for the same offense. Again, there are studies that confirm this. Minnesota has the second highest rate in disparity for educational attainment than anywhere in the country. For those saying that race has no impact and we need to ignore it, that would just be counterfactual. Right. If you tried to tell any of my students of color or LGBTQ students that race or their gender identity or sexual identity had no impact on the way they were treated, that would also be counterfactual. Your job legally is to provide and ensure that all students are afforded a free and appropriate public education. Right? That's your mandate. And providing counterfactual education is not providing an appropriate education. We would not be preparing children for this world if that were the case. Declining to talk about the history of racism, segregation, redlining, the massacre at Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was a 100th anniversary recently, is not teaching, not talking about that is not teaching a patriotic American history, it's rewriting American history. A patriotic education is the freedom of speech and ideas, including history and ideas of race and some of these hard topics. A patriotic education is teaching that all people are created equal, and when they aren't treated equally, that we work to create a more perfect union, not looking the other way and pretending that it's not happening. I just wanted to end by taking a moment to recognize Ruby Bridges, who was the first little girl to desegregate New Orleans School District. So just please take a moment truly for what she had experienced. So she's 66 years old today. Now I'd just like you to recognize, just take one moment to just recognize and think and pray for my students of color who likewise don't always feel safe going into their school.
Thank you.
Marshall Ferris. Find my knee. I have a sports injury. I rolled over wrong in bed, apparently.
I'm Marcia Ferris. I've been here before. The last time I was here, I was holding a book, and I was in opposition to banning books. Today, I'm here to support teachers and support teaching accurate history, science, diversity, tolerance, and inclusion. My children graduated from this school. They're wonderful people. They got a great education. Keep doing what you're doing. You are a school of excellence. Please keep us a school of excellence. Prepare our children for the future. Short and sweet. Keep doing what you're doing and prepare them for the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia.
Danielle Arnold.
Hi, my name is Danielle Arnold, and I'm a mental health counselor here in Brainerd. I have my master's degree in counseling psychology and with an emphasis in social justice. Thank you for this opportunity to provide insight to the importance of equity and diversity training for our educators, particularly within the school setting and expanding into the community as it relates to mental health. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a motivational theory in psychology, everyone is driven to achieve safety and a sense of belonging. Children and adolescents spend a majority of their time in school, so it's no wonder we look to evaluate the effect the school environment has on children's mental health. Research correlates belonging with motivation, attention, effort, academic performance, and persistence. Feeling connected to others also increases a student's willingness to learn and behave in school and is the core to academic success. Unfortunately, this puts historically marginalized students at a disadvantage. So how do we ensure that all students feel safe and have a sense of belonging in our schools to achieve optimal wellness? Research on improving school climate to support student success recommends that schools make it clear to students that in this environment they will be safe, protected, and valued. This begins with positive and accurate cultural representations and messages of inclusiveness in the curriculum and classrooms. When I work with adolescents and we evaluate their resources or their areas of support, school climate always plays a significant role. Does the student feel safe at school? Do they have peers and or staff they can trust or relate to? Is school staff culturally responsive, etc.? It is detrimental to adolescents' development that they feel accepted, respected, and represented. Equity training supports staff in removing barriers at school so that all students can succeed. Equity strategies in the classroom include implementing culturally relevant teaching practices and being aware of stereotypes and implicit biases and working to address them. My work as a mental health counselor, as a school counselor, and as a clinical counselor, my work with LGBTQ+ and Black, Indigenous, people of color students, as well as other marginalized populations, highlights the need for inclusive teaching methodologies and policies in order to combat the discrimination many face, which leads to increased risk for anxiety, depression, and trauma. Some of the most powerful stories that students share with me are about peers who stood up for them in the hallway, teachers that include stories of kids just like them, and the policy change that allowed them to feel seen and heard. Let's encourage more of that. Let's build more of these constructive stories, teachers who feel confident in making equitable classrooms and spaces to ensure that all students feel safe, connected, acknowledged, and respected. A positive school climate that endorses all students is crucial.
I have to cut you off at that point.
Let us celebrate differences and stay curious. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking.
Danielle.
We're here?
Yeah, please. She can also sit in the other chair.
Come on over here.
Absolutely.
Our 3 minutes doesn't start till we talk, right? We're not talking.
Okay, you can start now.
All right, well, miigwech for this open forum, thank you for this. And I'm really speaking from my heart in terms of why we're here and why we have to be here, right? So we have hallways that are lined with individuals that are speaking about critical race theory, and I can tell you as an educator that has a master's degree in education and has spent decades teaching, that critical race theory is not something that's on our radar in education, and you know that too as people that are involved with education. And so I'm not here to debate whether or not we should or should not talk about critical race theory in our schools. What I am here is to make sure that there is not misunderstandings about what is happening and what isn't happening in our schools. And I'm not sure what this actually translates to when people keep coming here to open forums to speak against critical race theory. Are we saying that we should not be teaching accurate history? And that's why you may see some people that have teach the truth. And that's basically all of our kids, regardless of their race, deserve to know the truth in the history of this country, right? And the truth sometimes is uncomfortable, and it sometimes is hard, because not all of us have the same history coming into this situation, and not all of our histories are being taught within schools. I can tell you, because I educate all over this state, that many educators do not know that there were forced internment camps, residential schools for our Native children, that many of our Native people that are standing in this room, sitting in this room and in these hallways, have a very different educational experience historically than others. And that's just the truth. We come differently because of racial policies that created differences in our routes through systems. And so that's not even a debate. That is the truth. And all I ask is that we teach the truth. But then I ask something bigger than that, is that this is not a level of whether or not one person agrees and one person disagrees, that our system should uphold the truth in education. Our system should uphold anti-bias education and anti-racist education, and that all of our children deserve to feel safe, that they belong in our systems, and that they can be educated in a way that has their historical perspectives, that they also have heroes. Can you stand up for a minute for me? My daughter right now is wearing a shirt that says, "Dream like Billy, lead like Wilma, fight like Russell, think like Vine, write like Sherman, build like Susan, speak like N. Scott, educate like Winona, believe like Jim, and challenge like John." I dare any of you to name 2 of those people, because our history, our schools are not teaching this. And that's what we need, is to teach the truth, and we all deserve to have our positive narratives in the school systems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Slaughter.
Good evening. I am an ordained minister and work as a local hospice chaplain, and just wanted to give a quick history of what I've learned over the years, that the idea of separation of church and state was a phrase that was taken out of a letter written to Thomas Jefferson, written to the Danbury Baptists in Connecticut at a certain time in our nation's history. And he was basically trying to assure that the Church of England would not be the only church in America. That's what he meant by that. And years later, many years later, it was taken out of context in a Supreme Court decision decades ago. I can't remember the name, but check on that. So the idea of separation of church and state, to my understanding, is a myth in this country, even though we throw it around too much. I'd like to share a story about Abraham Washington, a guy that I learned about at a Promise Keepers event in the Twin Cities years ago when I was a college student. I went with my dad. Abraham Washington was a Black American who got up on stage, and to break the ice, he was talking about, he asked the question, "Why am I colored?" And he goes, "You white people, you know, when you get sick, you get blue. When you get cold, you get blue. When you get sunburned, you get red. When you get sick, you get green," and stuff like that. And so he's like, "Well, why am I the one that's called colored when he's basically stays the same color when he gets sunburn or whatever, or when he's sick?" So, created a lot of laughter. And anyway, the reason for that is that none of us get to choose the color of skin that we're born with. And my understanding, we are all made in the image of God.
Yeah. That's right.
And so we don't get to control who we're born to, what we look like, the environment we're in. None of us get to choose that. It's out of all of our control. Cool. And so my understanding, and I when I fill out some of the assessments and things like that, I don't like the division a lot of times. When it asks for race, my understanding, there are multiple ethnicities, there is one human race. And we are pretty similar in a lot of ways, believe it or not, mentally and emotionally specifically, to my understanding, and traveling the world as a veteran and a study abroad student and so on and so forth. So that's my understanding of what the scriptures talk about too. There's one human race. We're all made in the image of God, and we have no control over that. So
thank you, Reverend. Yep.
Thank you.
You know, we hear a lot of this. I don't know if you guys see this. Is this equitable? We talk about separation of church and state. Y'all see this? I believe this right here is the Word of God. Whether you believe it or not, that's irrelevant. If you look at this as a tool, that's what this is right here for, a tool. I believe it as a Word of God. I had a meeting here a couple days ago. Oops, somebody forgot their water bottle. Thank you. I had a meeting here last Thursday, and I asked the question. I think I asked it here last time too. I believe what Martin Luther King said, that all men, that you judge them on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin. Not on the color of the skin. I'm glad that we're having equal time here, not equity time. I'm glad that Heidi's keeping track of the time, because it's equal time. I don't know when equality was transposed for equity. Martin Luther King fought for equality between everybody. So we all have equal access to everything, every opportunity. We are American privilege. I don't know where I asked that question, where was it where equality got transposed for equity? Because they are not the same word. No way, no how are they the same word. You know, the question that I had last time, and hopefully the Equity Board will be able to answer these questions, because I see that they're on the agenda. The school district had Timothy Lensmeyer coming here. He was, you know, he didn't come for the in-service day. From what I heard, there were books that were purchased to give to the teachers to read about equity. If I'm wrong, correct me, but there supposedly there were books that were purchased, and who purchased them, who okayed them. And these critical race theory books, the anti-racism books that are in the classrooms in the school district, you know, who purchased these? You know, and who approved them? I'd like to know who approved them, probably more than who purchased them. Because, you know, when I hear the different people talk about some of the things, I can guarantee you that the majority of these people have never seen that book. It's perfectly normal. And I know that that is in the school. It was never approved. It went through the House and the Senate twice. And I think Bob's going to be checking on that book. I think you're going to be checking to see if it's in the school. If you haven't seen that book, if I used that book and showed it to my two children, I can guarantee you I'd be labeled as a pedophile. Amen. So anyway, with that, I know I've got just a few seconds. We are American privilege. We are American privilege. And I absolutely firmly believe what Martin Luther King said, that we judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. And equity, to me, is nothing more than instituting racism. And I don't care what color you are, if you're instituting one has more favor than the other, that's racism. Any way, shape, or form. I don't care what color you are. So I think that might be 30 seconds, but thanks.
David Gecker.
I did.
Okay.
Hello, I'm David Gedker, and I live in Merrifield, and I'm a resident of this county and school district. And I appreciate you opening up the time for us to express our opinions. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. This is what our country was founded upon, equality. No, our country wasn't perfect in the beginning in regards to equality, but we have come a long way from then to Martin Luther King Jr. and just a few years ago, having elected the first black president. No, we are not perfect even yet today, but our founding fathers created the best form of human government ever to have existed. People of other races and cultures dream of one day living in the United States. I lived in Guatemala for almost 5 years, and that was the main hope and dream of many of the wonderful people that I knew there. I saw many risk their lives just to cross the Mexican frontier in order to find opportunity and a better life in the United States. Yes, the consensus of those in other countries is that the USA is where opportunity can be found, where dreams can be realized, and where hope is alive for people of all races and cultures. In contrast, critical race theory pits one race against another. It is divisive and destructive to the lives of our children and grandchildren, teaching them that they should be ashamed and guilty for the color of their skin. I'm not saying that there's no racism in this great country, but what I am saying is that we have come a long, long way since the days of slavery and even Martin Luther King. As Dr. Carol Swain, a former professor of political science and law at Princeton and Vanderbilt, said recently, who happens to be a black lady, she said in an article in the Epoch Times, speaking of some of the past racist history in this country, she said, quote, "The true story of America is a story of blacks and whites working together to overcome that tragic part of our history." She went on to state regarding her childhood growing up in the South during a time of racial tensions, quote, "My love of country came about because when I was in school, we were taught civics and patriotism. And I felt like I lived in the greatest nation in the world." And finally, she stated, quote, "I did not see myself as handicapped because I was black, poor, or a woman. I took advantage of what America offered. And today's youth," she goes on to say, quote, "today's youth, minorities, are being crippled in their minds because they have been told by the political left that they can't do what they can't do, and they are being handicapped. Yes, critical race theory divides, shames, and causes more racism." The quote, "It is for the children," we hear at every school bonding referendum. I would just like to pose the question to you: is critical race theory for the children, or is it just being pushed upon us by someone's political agenda? Thank you.
You were gonna speak? Okay, well,
I could just say, I guess I didn't know I was going to speak. I will. Okay. I just thought we were supposed to turn these in, but, okay. I am here because of the critical race theory has brought to my attention just recently. This should not be taught to our students or the teachers. We belong to one race, the human race. If anyone would read the Bible, they would know that we are one, we are all God's children. Let's not teach division to this community. We should not judge anybody by the color of our skin. Children and adults make friends with others because they like that person. We should not be looking at the color of one's skin. This can cause one race color to feel less confident than the other. So let's just let children pick their friends. And if we don't just let them pick their friends, we start teaching them this, we are going to cause discrimination. We're going to just put that into their hearts because we just need to let them love each other. Like we're all called to love one another. And if what we all really do need is Jesus. Because if we receive Jesus, we're going to look at everybody the same. We're going to have love for all mankind. And that is, we're probably always going to have discrimination because not everybody has Jesus in their heart. And once we receive Christ in our heart, that love grows in us and it grows to all mankind. Just like each one of you, I look at you all as God's children. No matter, if you're lighter or darker, we're all one. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's it?
He saves all the cards, yes.
Hello. I can go ahead.
Yeah, please do.
My name is Stephen Elg, Brainerd resident. I will have 3 children in the Brainerd School District this fall. I guess the main reason I wanted to show up here was just give support to the board. I don't want you to feel bullied or pressured into, banning any kind of ideas, unless we, based upon what appears to be maybe not misunderstanding, but a term that is being defined many different ways. And I think that's part of the problem is that we have, and I see this going on a lot in, on national discussions, but even here, you take a term and it's defined by different people by different ways. There was a fellow veteran, I'm retired Minnesota Army National Guard earlier, who was reading off what he believed critical race theory to be. I mean, it's radically different than things I've seen, but that's part of the problem. It's all over the map. So I guess if we go down the road of banning ideas, let's define what these ideas are. You can't take a term that has a wide range of different definitions, ban that term, teaching of that term, and then all of a sudden now you move the goalposts. We're going to ban this, but really then now we can throw in all this other stuff. I would hope nobody here wants our kids being taught that one race is better than another or to hate a race. I don't think that's what this is about, but I think people believe that's what this is about. So so I guess keep doing what you're doing and don't get caught up in the fear mongering. So I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Susan Bolio?
Hello, Susan.
Bonjour. Nagana Benesi Kwe Nadijna Kaz, Magazine Indodem, Misquag Mivazaga Igning Ndonjaba. Hello, and thank you for having me here today and this open discussion. It's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. In 1967, my family, the Bolio family, was removed from this area to the White Earth Reservation. I don't think there's probably very many people in this room that recognize that. Someone earlier said we should teach all sides of the issue, and I couldn't agree more. But the problem is that our histories are not being taught in the schools. My children are not reflected in the curriculum. That is what we're talking about. We are talking about making sure that all kids see themselves reflected in the schools. My day-to-day job, I teach about historical trauma, adverse childhood experiences, and how those things play out in our communities today. I work with people in our Indigenous communities who have been traumatized from the past and continue to this day, working to heal. This is something that this school district can help to do. The healing work for this country doesn't just fall on people of color. It falls on all of us, but it has to start with truth-telling. Miigwech.
Thank you.
Jeff Bird.
Evening.
Look.
My name is Jeff Berg. I live at 4718 Pine Beach Road in Brainerd, outside of Brainerd. I had 2 kids that went through this school district, and they're doing well too. I've listened, I came on one side, and I've listened like you have to both arguments, both sides. And there are points on both sides. I moved a little bit the other way I didn't want to go. Okay, I hope you've heard both sides and figured out where you stood at one time too, or prior to this meeting even. There is a lot to say about CRT that I believe that is going to be the leading part, or leading on from this point. If we accept it, what we hear about intersectionality, and pointing out to me that I'm a white male and you're a white female. There's one more point for you, basically. It makes inequality and it opens everything to judgment, personal judgment. And what we're trying to do is achieve a generic application of the law, of an idea, actually, a theory. And then the other thing about critical race theory is the first word. Critical could be defined two different ways. Could be, boy, really examining, you know, really searching through the small points. Otherwise, it could be interpreted as being criticizing. And that's what I think we see if you look at critical race theory from both sides, that it pits one against the other, and you against me and us against them. And I think we've done pretty good coming along the way. Sure, the United States started out in slavery. We had lots of good points that were brought up, incidences of bad racial situations and segregation and the civil rights. But we're moving on that. Critical race is really jumping off an edge, that a high dive that's really a chance, and it could be very devastating. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's everyone, Heidi?
That's all the cards I have.
Is there anyone that has any other thought? Well, thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Oh, can't double dip. Sorry, Doug. No, but thank you for coming. We've heard all of your voices. We will definitely take that under advisement. You know, I just want to say, as Mr. Berg said, there's truth in both sides. I heard that lesson from Don Ryan, who's our county attorney, and he said, you know, Bob, in a criminal case, there's always a little truth that everyone says on either side. You have to listen to that too. And so this school board pledges to do that. And I just thank you all for coming tonight. Now we're going to go on to the business meeting, and we'd love you to stay, but you can leave too if you want to. Okay? Because we have a lot of stuff. But thank you for coming. Okay, should we start? Okay. Next we have new business. The first business item is to approve proposal number 84181.
We have to approve the minutes.
Oh, sorry, you guys.
Motion to approve the regular school board meeting of June 14th.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Hagelin, second by Director Nelson, to approve the minutes of the June 14th meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Next, we have the consent calendar as presented. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Boyles, second by Director Blacklance, to approve the consent calendar as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes.
I think we have to leave the doors open because it's a public meeting.
Oh. Ladies, I think.
Can we leave one door open?
We will, I'm just letting the hallway
Okay, okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to approve, or have a proposal to approve item number 84181, utilizing Sourcewell contracts, which includes the Brainerd High School Academic Wing science casework for a price of $779,536 as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Director Sjogren, seconded by Director Nelson, to approve proposal 84181 for the high school academic wing. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Next, and we heard all of this in that meeting when Damian Williams was here. The next one is to approve proposal number 84191, utilizing Sourcewell contracts, which includes the South Campus gym flooring and equipment for an owner-directed amount not to exceed $135,150 as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Director Hagelin, second by Director Blacklands to approve proposal 84191, not to exceed $135,150. Any discussion?
I'd just like to thank ICS for making sure that we use Sourcewell for these contracts.
Oh, absolutely. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Next, we move on to the approval to move the schematic design to design development at the Brainerd Learning Center as presented.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Sjogren, seconded by Director Nelson to move the schematic design to design development at the BLC. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. I just want to mention for the audience, some of you might think, oh my gosh, there's no discussion on this. But we get a board book that we go through all this, and if we have questions, oftentimes we'll have them answered before the meeting. So I didn't want you guys to think that we were just passing this willy-nilly
Well,
here.
and they just reviewed it too at this meeting, so,
Yeah.
yeah, good review.
Okay. Next is to approve the renewal of the farm greenhouse with a center for a cost of $1 per year as requested.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Director Blackland, second by Director Sjogren, to approve the renewal of the farm greenhouse to the center for $1. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Can I make a clarification there? It
Sure.
should be renew the farm greenhouse lease with the center.
Oh, okay.
So if
And are you
it's
all
okay.
Yes.
Fine with that?
Okay, the word lease is missing in
Okay.
that, so.
Okay, next we have Marcy Lord here to go over the approval of a contract for fiscal year 2021 audit services with Clifton Larson Allen.
Hi. So this year, I actually did a request for proposals for the audit and received 2 responses. So in your guys' packet is the engagement letter with CLA. There is a change where prior, they would give us a pricing and it would be for the whole audit. Now it's broken out so that we can get a price of $33,500 and then it's for one single audit, and then any additional single audits would be for $2,000 to $4,000. So if we have one single audit, we'll actually save money. We paid about $38,000 last year. And if we have more than that, then it'll either be the same or a little bit more if we have even say 3 single audits. So I'm presenting this for your approval to move forward, and then we can get that started.
Yeah, and they've done a great job, so I'm really happy that
Yes.
they saved us some money on this bid.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, does someone have a motion?
I'll move to approve the contract for the audit services with Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Director Boyles, second by Director Blacklands to approve the contract for fiscal year 2021 audit services with Clifton Allen. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Next, we have the approval of the pupil transportation services agreement with Reichert Bus Company for July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023, as presented by Marcy.
Is Norby out there?
He was here, so.
Okay, thanks, Angie.
Yeah, I can go do the financial piece if you'd like. So this is a 2-year contract, as you guys had discussed at the previous meeting, and the financial changes are in 2.5.2. We did change so that it's not 10 payments throughout the year. It is actually going to be an advance payment estimate in August and September, and that advance will be deducted throughout the year, and then it will be based on actual invoicing or actual services. And then the other change as far as financials is Exhibit B, 3% was put on all of the rates compared to this previous contract. And if you want to recap anything non-financial.
Just in the professional conduct clause that's in there, and if you mentioned that or not, but we put that in extra. Otherwise, everything in the pond is pretty much the same. It's a contract that everybody's familiar with, and that's kind of why we went that route with the 2-year, as I think you might have said here already. And we got the commitment to the extracurriculars, which is really valuable to our programs, athletic programs. So that was a really great thing, I think, there to keep pushing that, especially with our driver shortage that we do have, and it is nationwide, that's for sure. But I have noticed in the dispatch that they've been running an ad there now with a full back page ad, which I'm sure many people have seen, and they have gotten some positive results out of that. So things are looking good. They had some little changes in staff over there, and so some things look really promising. July 7th, they're going to be out at the fairgrounds with test drive a bus stuff, and so we're really hoping that things are going to go in a positive light, and I guess we've got 2 years to do it. So we recommend that we pass this and get the best deal. So.
Well, I just want to say I'm happy that we came to this agreement, and the contract was going to end in 2 days, so it would have been hard for us, and we didn't want to plan a different direction. So thank you for all your hard work.
It's been a long haul and a good team effort with everybody, and board participation, so much appreciated.
And I just want to thank the board too, because with the guidance that you gave us at the last board meeting, I think that it was heard by the representatives from Reichert's as well. And when we proposed the contract, it was signed right away. And so we're really looking forward to working with them again and providing great service for our children. And if anybody wants to drive bus, we can get them in line. Yes.
We're about the fairgrounds on July 7th.
Yes, go to the fairgrounds on July 7th.
Yeah.
July 7th, fairgrounds. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the transportation services agreement as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Sjogren, seconded by Director Blacklands to approve the transportation agreement with Reichert's as a 2-year contract starting on July 1st. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Marcy, on the August and September payment, how do we come to that? Like, was that?
So with this last couple of years, we technically were overpaid very early, right? Because we just take what it will be for the year and divide it by 10. So we wanted to recognize that they do need a payment early on. So we did the advance, but then also we need to get that deducted sooner than
Okay. And I guess my second question is the existing or the new contract that they signed does have recourse for us if they're unable to fulfill routes.
Correct. Yeah, there's fining in there, and that is intended to be imposed if things aren't fulfilled, and then there's clauses in there for if they don't perform. So we'll deal with that. So
okay, thank you.
And as brought forward by Director Hagelin at the last meeting, our intention is to go through this school year and start next school year, and then start with the RFP process right away during that second year, so that we're not waiting till June 28th to make the decision to find out if we have transportation services. So we're going to get started on that process a lot earlier. So
Here. I think we can all agree we got a little close to the wire.
we got a little close, yeah. So.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the approval to renew the 2021-22 annual MREA membership in the amount of $2,500 as presented by Superintendent Larson.
Right, and this is exactly the same rate that it was last year. So I would recommend that we continue to stay connected with Minnesota Rural Education Association because they give us some great guidance, and they're also great lobbyists for us at the Capitol, as you have seen through this past legislative session. So,
Well, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
They only do rural schools, so they support us really well down at the legislature.
Yep.
I'll move the approval of the renewal.
And I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion by Director Larson, second by Director Boyles to renew this 21-22 annual MRE membership not to exceed $2,500. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Next, we have the approval of the second reading of the revised MSBA policy number 416, drug and alcohol testing as presented.
Good evening. Sorry I missed last board meeting. I'm feeling much better today. So thank you to Ms. Hahn for taking over for me. I do want to just make one quick clarification. Really kind of what she presented is accurate as far as the reason for the change. However, with the attachments, we do need to keep 4 of the attachments in case we do hire a type 3 driver, and that's their sole responsibility. So we still do have to keep that process in play. So you will see a little bit of a change in number 11 here that we're renaming, requesting a rename of 416D through G to 416A through D. So we're shrinking it, but we do want to still keep those in play just in case we do have some of those positions. Any other questions that have come up since last reading?
Let's take the vote then. Oh, I guess we have to have a motion
I'll move the approval of the
first.
second reading.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Sjogren, to approve the second reading of the revised MSBA policy 416 and to reinstate and rename 416D to 416G. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Next, we have the presentation of the 21-22 preliminary budget. Marcy.
You guys getting sick of seeing me up here yet?
Did item 11 get removed, or?
He put them together.
Oh, I put them together.
All right.
Because she had, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay, I missed that. That's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So in your board packet is the budget document, and it's quite lengthy, so this is just a very quick summary. Please feel free to ask questions as we go. So on page 2, I just want to note the free and reduced went from 40.05 to 36.76. We've been talking about that. The compensatory is down 3.29%. It continues, the document continues to walk through budget fundamentals, timelines, and funds. On page 4, it compares the 1920 actual results to the state average of the actual results for all other districts. And as you can see, we receive less federal and more state revenue than the average. And then also on page 5, there's a similar comparison. And then we are higher than the average on benefits. And I just want to note that we're less than average on administration. And on page 6, the fund balance summary is how we ended the year for 1920. And you can compare it then to the revised budget on page 7. So that's on 2021 is our revised budget, and that's our starting point for 2021. So we take that, and then we take all of the assumptions and figure out what changes we need to propose, and come up with what's being presented tonight. So our starting point was a deficit of $1,010,904 in the general fund, and the focus really is on the general fund, but if you guys have questions on the other funds, I can certainly speak to those too if you have anything. So some of the revenue assumptions, when I presented this at the May 24th meeting, nothing really has changed except for if we have had any new resignations and the 2.45% from the state. Woohoo. It's pretty exciting. So we had 0% when I presented to you guys. I put the 2.45% in, and then again, there's the decrease in compensatory. The state did not address that with what they presented, but we'll see what comes down the pike. Lane had talked this morning about there was potentially governor's discretion funds. Who knows? But for right now, we just put the 2.45% in. And then 2.7 million in ESSER $2 is in there as well. And then we had a decrease in enrollment of 57, and then the allocation or a 10% decrease in title funding if we knew. And then the removal of the county cares funds and Blueprint 181 rebates. So our enrollment projections are really what drive our revenue. And this projection model is from Ellers. We had used a different school finances prior to this. And it just basically takes our transition between grades and projects that based on the last 5 years of data and weights it on the most recent data. So you can see that we are going from a projected end of 6,194 in 2021 to 6,137 in 21-22, which is the decrease of 57. And then we have 430 projected for kindergarten. As of today, we did get that we have 440, so that's good. Hopefully it stays that way throughout the whole summer and maybe even increases, but in the budget.
So we're already above our kindergarten numbers?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I talked to Andreen this morning as well, and she's very encouraged by the number of kids that are coming back and kindergarten numbers, and so we're going to be cautiously optimistic now as we go and move towards August. So, yeah.
And then the expense assumptions. So there's an increase in the OPEB implicit subsidy, so we can draw down more, which is good. And then the estimated increase in salary, labor agreements and related benefits, as discussed, that's a 1% for right now. As you know, that's once we get into negotiations, that very well could change. And then the net addition of staffing is approximately 10.35. And the main reason that's an addition, not a reduction, is because of the CARES funds. We've been able to use a lot of that to save on classrooms and then also add some additional staffing with systems and curriculum. So that CARES funding has been a very positive thing for the district. And then I just wanted to note on page 14, I did summarize capital, and I apologize if you looked at it earlier today because it was 1920 and 2021. So it's been updated to reflect 2021 and 21-22. And the main thing I want to note on there, you'll see a difference is activities was removed. So a lot of the capital was used for uniforms, which I'm trying to switch it so that capital is being used the way fixed assets over our fixed asset threshold, not for items that are less than that. So supplies really shouldn't be taken out of capital. And so we're trying to make that transition, and part of that is removing that and then putting it into the general fund. And known replacement savings is in the budget. As I said, it's a snapshot. I mean, we may have more resignations throughout the summer, will not be reflected in this budget because it'll be after the fact. So the 21-22 preliminary budget has a deficit of about $798,000 in the unassigned fund balance. And then in all the other funds, interest was reduced. So we had a really tough year with interest. We did not, the markets have not been great. So I did reduce them in all of the funds except for the OPEB funds. The OPEB funds did do well this year. So I did increase that one. Food service, as you know, we are going to continue with the free meals next year. So that was updated to reflect the federal reimbursement and removing any fees collected from families because that won't be happening. And then expenses we left unchanged because food products, we were under in expenses this year in food service, but we don't know if that'll continue for next year. So we just left them as is. And then same with labor agreements they were left as is because there were positions that were not filled, but we also don't know what's going to be settled. So those were unchanged in that. The community service fund was updated based on the projections received from the community ed director. And I just wanted to point out, it is a little concerning that our school readiness and our community service is going negative. But in talking with Corey, in order to get our fees back, we need to get staff back in place. And so some of those expenses are being front-loaded before the fees come in. So our hope is in that the next year we'll see those fees come back and that we won't have a deficit in that area. But I did want to point out that if we cannot eliminate that deficit, we will have to look at transferring from the general fund to cover that. And then the building construction fund is updated based on the cash draw schedule from ICS, and then any recent interest projections from Ellers. And then debt service is updated to reflect what we have levied and then what our debt payments are for the next year. And then our post-employment benefits is updated based on the Hildy actuarial report. And then the unassigned fund balance, I was very happy to be able to update this slide that we have updated the policy to 10%. And I will keep that, the state recommends the 3 months, but it was nice to be able to make that change. And so with the projected balance, we would be at 6.5% or less than 1 month of operating. So we'll continue to keep that 10% as our target and hopefully be able to, one of these times I will be able to report to you that we have met our goal. Are there any questions? There's a lot of data and this was brief, so I hopefully it was what you guys will.
Marcy, I have a question. So fiscal year 21, because there were different years in here.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, you projected that we could have a $500,000 loss by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But what I see here is a positive balance.
So if you could tell me which one you're looking at.
Fiscal year 21.
Okay.
If I'm reading it right, is it 138,148?
138,148.
Or, no, I'm sorry, I'm reading that wrong.
So in the fiscal year 21 first revised budget, we would be at a deficit of about $1 million in the unassigned, and then in total in the general fund, it'd be 2.6 million. But those are all in the other restricted categories.
And
it's kind of deceiving because a big chunk of that is our LTFM, which is the Blueprint 181 projects we've committed to.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got questions.
Of course.
And thank you for bringing up, our recent policy change on what we want to have for reserve funds, but this is really going backwards from where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So to go into the next fiscal year with I think combined a little over $1 million deficit it's just totally going the wrong way. And I can't sleep well knowing that that's the direction, that's what we've got in front of us. As well as even the community service, it's the first time that I've really seen that just really take a big change. When I look at even in that's a smaller category, but when I look at just the salary and the benefits and how much that's increased as a percentage, just over the course of 4 or 5 years, it's no wonder that it's upside down now. I don't see how we're going to be able to sustain that, which means, as you said, we're going to pull out of the general fund. So I think we've got a lot of work, for me anyway, a lot of work ahead of us to sharpen the pencil. We've got to figure out a way so that we go into the year with not a deficit, but an excess, so we can start reaching our goal.
With the federal funds this year, it'll be better than projected for 2021, just because that was done in January and we'll be able to move some expenses. And then as far as the community service, that's one thing we talked about this morning is when we are looking at the next candidate, we need to have, what is their background on? Have they done this before? Have they been able to look at when a community ed fund is in deficit, what have they been able to dig their way out of it?
Well, and that's a really tough budget right now with what happened the past year.
Yes.
And having to, lay off people and then rehire them and not knowing what your revenue is gonna be from that. So I
Yes.
understand why it's happening, but you're right, the person that we hire has to
We
be
even
good with
talked about
numbers.
some realignment today and what that might look like. And so we're looking at our candidate pool and seeing. One other thing I would like to bring up is that, again, this budget that she's got here is what we were estimating that we were going to end this school year with back in January. That's the number that we started. And thank you tonight for approving the audit, because we want to get going on the audit a lot faster this year to find out where we did finish out this school year with COVID and what actually happened financially. We believe that we're going to be a lot better in our audit at the end of the year than what we were projecting in January. But we have to get the audit results, or at least the preliminary ones, to know. And so I think you're going to see that number a lot better in the revised budget. And then, like Marcy said, there are.
What is the timing for that revised budget?
In December, I normally present that.
I wonder if before that we could have a work session to really dig into the numbers.
So is 11.4, that's projected ending budget for?
Correct.
Right.
And normally what happens is then in the revision, you guys would see what did we actually end at. And so instead of 6.6 million in unassigned, it very well could be 7 million or 7 point, I always hate
Or it
throwing
could
out
go the
numbers.
other way too, though.
Yes.
I mean, we don't know at this point.
And just so I understand, I mean, the state legislature just acted, but we already know, I mean, that's pretty solid in terms of what's in here relates directly to what came out of that.
Yes.
Subject to what enrollment looks like.
Correct.
Okay.
The 2.45 is in here, but there are other funds in there as well in the agreement that hopefully is going to get approved either today or tomorrow. And so there are going to be some other dollars that are available, but we got to see how it washes out. That's part of the issue too, is here we are June 28th and we don't have a budget yet from the state. So it's been hard.
And in the revision, we would look at what our current, I mean, right now, we're just projecting enrollment. At that point, we would know numbers. Like, if it is 440 that shows up, I add 10 kids to this, and that really helps that number, so.
Yeah. One other thing that I'd like to add is, remember there were 3 rounds of federal dollars, and so we've kind of just set them aside so that we have equal amounts over the course of 4 years. And there still are some additional dollars in there. So if something should happen that we would deficit spend by $700,000, we do have that covered for this year. But we're trying to not spend any more of the federal dollars than we have to at this point.
And the more is, I'm learning more and more about these federal dollars. So I think this summer, I'm gonna have to really look at what we did, because I heard one school that basically got approval from MDE that what reductions they would have made can all be coded to the CARES funds. And if that's the case, then I have a lot of work to do. So, but that would really help us. So I will look into that. And same with community ed. So those federal dollars, we were told we could not use for lost revenue, but maybe if I can look at, was additional staffing needed in community ed, then I can code that staffing to the federal dollars. So there's just a lot, I have to do a lot more.
And I
Thanks
think
for
the
all
board
the
needs a.
gymnastics you're doing there. That's really helpful. I mean, I think the Gears and Esser stuff is messy.
Yeah, yes.
Has been.
And I think when it levels out, we know more about enrollment, and we know more about state funding and all the federal dollars. We need to sit down and have, like I said, a work session. So
Yes.
the whole board understands it better.
I forget what the protocol is as to when we have to approve a first budget.
Tonight.
So I'm not comfortable with approving a budget that shows $1 million deficit, and I realize we've got, well, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. But if none of those things happen, then I'm gonna hear that, well, we approved the budget with $1 million deficit. So how are we?
The difference is this year, that if worst case scenario, all that happened, we do have federal dollars in the ESSER 3 dollars that will cover it for this year.
The general fund, but not the community service, or the full $1 million? I think it was $1,040,000.
So-
$1,048,000.
Yep, $1,040,000 is the total for the general fund, but the restricted ones, so Q comp, that's a set plan. There's no changing that. Staff development, same thing. Operating capital, LTFM, those are all restricted. So, and I always look at the unassigned, which is the 798. And I mean, I'm going off of what was done in the past. You know, I presented the preliminary last month. If you guys would like more of a work session prior to this meeting, that's something we can do next year.
Well, I just think we should also see what kind of an excess fund we need to end up with in order to start reaching our policy of our reserve fund of 10%.
Yeah.
I don't know what that number, is, but we can't just keep kicking the can down the road, and even at a neutral is we're not gaining.
Correct.
So, you could look at it and say, well, if there's 780 or whatever that number is at the Feds that we could put in there, okay, that wipes out a big chunk of it, but we need to have excess in order to reach our goal. Otherwise, that
It would be
policy
nice
means-
if we could use some of those federal dollars that are one-time dollars to reach our goal, our fund balance goal. And I don't know if that's a possibility.
I don't think you can use it for that.
Well, they keep changing the rules on that too, on how we can use the dollars, so yeah, but I don't think we can use it for that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're adding, so we can use it to add these staff, but I don't know.
I mean, Tom, are you looking for, sort of an additional addendum to this that sort of has the nuclear option where if we're, what is the plan if we can't close that gap? And then is that what you're looking for?
Right, yeah.
I mean, I think that's reasonable to say that if none of the dominoes fall the direction we need them to fall, instead of Keystone copying it when it happens or doesn't happen, to have a preliminary idea of what we would do to trim $700,000 would probably be prudent.
We can get you that.
And the plus, we need to go in.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Excess,
I'm sorry, I used the wrong number, but I get what you're saying.
Otherwise, that policy that we debated on several months ago it means nothing.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
So I don't know how someone else make.
I mean, hopefully that's a contingency plan, right? That's in case of emergency break glass sort of thing.
Well, and we absolutely can get that for you especially this year. We definitely can do that, but we were trying to be really conservative in how much we took from the federal dollars. And so we certainly can find that for you.
I mean, in the end, I'm kind of with Tom in that, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that the need to stay on track with building the reserve supersedes protecting the federal dollars in my book.
One other thing, though, that I would just like to remind you, and I think I want to say that it's every year, because this is preliminary budget. It's not the actual. And I would bear to remember, I think that because of our conservative approach and how we do our budgeting and those kinds of things, that we have a deficit number every year we come with the preliminary budget. Because there are some things that aren't finalized. We don't have the audit results. Because we budget very conservatively, we always do so much better in the audit than we've estimated, because Marcy and I both always think low for enrollment and et cetera. So I think we're going to be just fine.
Big fan of under promise, over deliver. Love it.
Correct.
And if some of those dominoes fall the right way, drinks are on Tom.
Noted.
But you're absolutely right. This has been the most strange year with a budget ever. And there just still are so many unknowns that it's scary. But
we have to do a vote tonight. So how can we address? Can we?
you can ask us to bring, or ask Marcy to bring forward to the next board meeting a plan of if we weren't going to do this, how would we balance this budget?
Okay.
And it could also, yeah. So.
Because is somebody even going to have a motion to approve this?
Well, I think we have to. I don't
think
think
we
we can
have.
go into a new fiscal year
Yeah.
without an approved budget.
And it is just a preliminary budget.
Yeah, but there's nothing more permanent than a temporary thing, and that's kind of how sometimes a preliminary budget is viewed, so. That's why I'm,
Yeah, I don't want to unnecessarily delay this, but I like the idea of having a net underneath in case the wire breaks.
Absolutely.
and I would make an attempt to make a motion to accept the preliminary budget as long as the revised budget allows us to have the excess calculated funds so that we start meeting our excess fund balance goals.
That sounds doable.
Do you know what I'm trying to say, Janet?
No, I'll have to listen to it again.
So you want to make the motion that way?
If
Well, if there's a
works.
second, we have to.
I just, for me, I'm just not comfortable with going into, I don't want to see us go into a balanced budget. If we don't have excess, we are kicking the can down the road again.
So you hear that?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Or if someone else wants to make a better motion, I'm fine with that.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Director Hagelin, second by Director Blacklands, to approve the 21-22 preliminary budget as presented, but as modified by Tom's words, that you'll find out later.
Do you have, I just want to clarify
Oh, okay.
something. Did you want like an alternative plan at the next meeting on how we would preliminary look at this, that if the bottom dropped out, just how we think that we would cover this at this time
Yeah,
for
thank
your
you. I
review?
think that's, yes, that's reasonable. Thank you, that'd be great.
Okay,
Whether it's at the next meeting or I guess it's gonna be
or maybe
Give you
the
enough
August
time.
9th.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you
August 9th.
clarified that, because the revised budget isn't presented until December, but if you want something sooner, then, yeah.
Well, I think too, yeah, if we, this is what we're going to do if these things don't come to
Yep.
fruition.
And would August 9th be better than July 19th?
That would be awesome.
For you?
Yep.
Just, okay, so August 9th, we'll have a report. Is that all right with the board?
That would be great.
Okay, and we could put that in the motion too, that we'll have a modified, I don't know.
It's a backup
I
plan.
think we're looking for a
Backup plan.
contingency plan to protect our commitment to building the reserve balance.
Ooh, that's nice.
I think that this is it's good discussion, but we need to acknowledge we're on a slippery slope here. I mean, we are approving this budget as presented, right? I mean,
Well,
we
with this
can't not approve
contingency,
it.
with this contingency.
Sure, with asking for a future report, but the fact is, we have to stand behind the fact that if we approve this, it's approved until we revise a budget in
Yeah, I'm
December.
still comfortable with that because it's preliminary and she'll represent in 2 meetings.
Represent,
Well,
not a whole new
So the
budget.
contingency, yeah.
I just want to be clear that, we aren't asking for a whole new budget in a month.
Yeah,
I think I agree with everything being said, but I think we can't hide behind this crafted motion. I mean, the fact is that we will be approving this.
Well, thank you,
As
Jan, for bringing it
presented.
up, because that's not what my intent is. So the revision has to show we're going to meet our goal of increasing our reserve funds. However we're going to do that, if it's cuts, if it's elimination, whatever it might be, if we don't get the federal funds and we don't get the head count and all those contingencies, so that's why I'm not even sure it's
What's the downside of tabling it until August 9th and have the contingency represented to us?
We can't. We have to have an approved budget in order to
Fiscal
get,
year,
yeah.
Okay, that's a good
And
answer.
can't
The other
operate
thing
without a
is that
budget.
we know what the federal dollars are. We know what they are for rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, which is a part of it, but to your point, we don't know how the current fiscal year is going to end.
Correct.
And when will we know that? Remind me. When?
So we get final numbers for, what are we getting paid based off of in August? And then we're continually closing the books, booking receivables. And so October is when the audit is scheduled.
October?
Yeah.
My only fear too is that we're just going to be still working with imaginary numbers and plugging numbers from a budgetary standpoint until enrollment is set for certain.
Yes.
I just think it's a big ask. I agree, Tom, 100%. We have to move toward our plan. I think this is a really hard year to try and bite off a big chunk of it. I think it's a great plan. What you're talking about is we need to be fiscally conservative and keep an eye on things more often than just approving a budget, hearing an audit, and then going to a revised budget. We can talk about it more, I think is what we're saying. But at the end of the day, if we're approving this budget. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but I just feel like we have to be pretty honest with ourselves.
You know, and again, thank you, Janet, for bringing it up. And perhaps next year, because now we're under the wire again of 2
Right.
days or something, but, you know, next year, maybe let's plan on a budget that is above balance. Here are the things that we have to remove unless funding or enrollment goes up, whatever it might be. Taking that approach.
And the other piece that's helpful too is anybody who, I'm not trying to suggest this, but if there's somebody uncomfortable with approving this budget, we don't have to have a unanimous vote to approve a budget, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Are we ready for the motion?
We have one on the
We have a
table, but it's.
motion.
You have the motion in a
slippery
second.
one.
Yeah, a motion in a second. Okay, all those in favor of the preliminary budget for 22, please say aye.
With the amendments.
With the amendments, yes.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Marcy.
Next, we need to approve to change the July school board meeting from July 12th to July 19th at 6 p.m. This will become a special school board meeting because we have some people that might be out of town on the 12th, so that's why it was changed. Any questions?
I'll move to change the school board meeting from July 12th to July 19th.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Boyle, second by Director Nelson to change our next school board meeting from July 12th to July 19th. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Okay, next on the agenda, we're going to have a board discussion on a commitment to equity for all students at Brainerd Public Schools ISD 181.
In your packets too is the copy of the letter that the board approved on June 8th, 2020, just for your review.
Okay. Do you want to start the discussion?
Yes. Like I said, in your packet is this letter of commitment to equity that the Board of Education approved on June 8th, 2020. And in this letter of commitment, the existing board that was here unanimously agreed that we would follow through on the bullet points that are on that document to complete a thorough review of district policies, procedures, handbook expectations, looking at it through that equity lens, to reconvene a multidisciplinary advisory task force, including representatives who were skilled in cultural competency, racial equality, and would bring forth prioritized recommendations for board consideration. To ensure culturally relevant curriculum offerings that align with the Minnesota standards and best practice instruction. To provide additional professional development for all district representatives to increase awareness and deeper understanding. To adhere to our professional responsibility to report misconduct, harassment, and bullying. And finally, to cultivate a school culture in which brave work, tough conversations, and whole hearts are the expectation to ensure that each child feels safe, accepted, heard, and included. And as we're aware, over the course of the last year, a full year now, a little bit more than that, we have been definitely working towards this. You know, in fact, as I was looking through this, it was kind of fun because it's like, wow, we're doing a really good job in that area and so on. The other thing too, as I look out into the audience, another conversation that we've had through throughout this time during the past year was the vote of non-concurrence and the commitment that we made to our APAC committee about that we were going to continue to do this work. Since that time, there have been a few things that have changed. One, we have 2 brand-new board members who were not part of this commitment at the time, and that we probably hadn't gone through this letter in great detail, or to talk about where we were exactly. Also, at the last board meeting, we had more of you step up to the plate and say, I would like to be on that committee. Kevin and Jana said that they would like to join the Equity Committee. Ruth said that she would like to join Charles on the APAC Committee and to have better conversation within our school. And so one of the conversations that we've been having as we've been listening to all of the people through our public comment periods that have been going on, through the work that we've been doing in these committees, is to have that conversation as a board to see, with 2 new board members and looking at where we are with the priorities that were approved last year, where are we now, and how would the board like us to move forward as we move forward with these 2 committees in particular, and as we move forward with this equity work for all of our learners in our school district. And so last week was really a great week. Our administrative team met and had a leadership conference like that Sourcewell has been providing Region 5 for many years. Brainerd has just taken part in it for the last 3 years. But we had a wonderful opportunity to meet with our principals and our leadership teams to bring forth some recommendations on, if we took this letter, what would they recommend? And that's something we can talk about later. But I just wanted to, and I know after talking to Chair Nystrom and Vice Chair Nelson, that we thought it would be a great opportunity for the board to actually come forward and say, this is where we are. You know, we're hearing from public comment, we're hearing from our committees, we're hearing both sides to the Dr. Lensmeyer piece, and we thought we're trying to have more of a transparent lens. And so we thought that this might be a great opportunity to have some of that conversation to help guide the administration as we move forward. So.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I think that was
Anything
great.
that I've missed from any of you that?
No, I think you hit the high points. I mean, I think maybe if it's okay, I'll go first. Hopefully, all 6 of us will have something to say tonight, because I think the community deserves it from each one of us. And frankly, I'm a little embarrassed that it's taken us 2 or 3 board meetings to get to the point where we're having this discussion. I want to applaud everybody that's still in the room. I think it's important that you folks are here to hear what we have to say. I think it's rather unfortunate that our friends at Lakeland Television decided to leave knowing that this was on the agenda tonight.
I know.
It appears that they really only cared about the public comment portion of this thing. But one of the reasons that I originally chose to run for school board was because of a perceived lack of transparency. And I think, again, we've sat back. I can't speak for the other 5 of you, but I can say that I have spent a significant number of hours reading emails from both sides, if you will. I'll talk about that in a second. Heidi, you can shut off your phone. I'm going more than 3 minutes if she's still here.
30 seconds?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. This is maybe the most important conversation this board will have this year. I hope it is, because if we're still having this conversation in 3 months, perhaps we're still not doing our job, in my opinion. And it's important to note that everything that I say is just my opinion. But here's my opinion on a few things. One, public input's great. It's all well and good. But in the end, I heard a few things that kind of stuck out tonight from the public comments that we listened to. The first one, several times, was that the implication was that we're paying lip service to the idea that it's for the children. I take issue with that. I know these 5 people, and I know Superintendent Larson, and everything that we do, whether you agree with it or not, is done for the children. Now, there are other implications, concerns, and considerations that we have to take into account. That would be the impact on staff. That would be the impact on the community. That would be the impact on the administration, all of these other things. But the kids come first, period. So now let's talk about equality versus equity. They are not the same thing. But you can't have one without the other. So in my world, I live in a world where we teach something called financial literacy. And in so doing, what we hope to do is give people the sea legs that takes them towards what we refer to as financial wellness. You can't get well until you understand how to get well. Equality is the first step in that process. In my opinion, equity is the next step in that process. Now, before anybody cheers, I'm going to piss you guys off in a minute too. But first, equity, what is it? I believe that this debate has been wrongfully hyper-focused on race. Equity, to me, is much, much bigger than that. And so that's why I take umbrage with the idea that equality is all we need, that we don't need equity, that we can only get equity, and equity is subtracting something from somebody to give it to somebody else. If that's the case, then we should stop construction on the South Campus right now. What do those special ed kids need that building for? We're all equal. We can tear up my son's IEP and put him back off of a special education program and just let the poor autistic little guy fend for himself. All right? Those are all forms of equity. And if you don't believe in that, then we're just not going to agree. And that's okay. You can deal with me however you want to. Now, to the other side. Hypersensitivity around this being only about race. I understand that the George Floyd murder created a whirlwind of activity, concern, emotion, outrage, all of those things. But I don't know that I would have signed this letter last year, because to me it felt like it was done just in response to George Floyd, and there are dozens, hundreds, millions of other kids out there that deserve the same focus, the same equity, and the same attention. So that's my take on that piece. CRT, let's talk about that for a minute. I'm sure outside this building, it's a thing. I hadn't heard the word until Gene Gedker came in here 2 board meetings ago. You want to know why? Because it's a framework taught in law schools. It's not being taught in our schools, and we have people running around in the newspaper. We have people running around in the community saying that we're teaching this in our schools. We are not teaching it in our schools, and will I sit at this desk? We won't, if I have anything to say about it. That said, we are going to focus on justice. We are going to focus on correct history, and we are going to focus on the ideal that, one, every single child that goes into one of our facilities deserves to see themselves reflected in the curriculum and in the culture, and that their learning experience is protected by this group of people right here, period. I don't think that's debatable. Last, let's get to Dr. Lensmeyer for a minute. I'm here to tell you that this body didn't do our job there either, in my opinion. We didn't approach it the way that we should have. But it was a learning experience. So I'm not going to sit and beat myself up, and I'm certainly not going to beat my 5 colleagues up over it. What I'm going to say is learning experiences are learning experiences for a reason. You pick yourself off, you dust yourself off, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you move on smarter and wiser. But the national media doesn't want to let us do that because one of the other speakers tonight was like, well, all the national media is talking about CRT. It's not. Only one little corner of the national media is talking about CRT. If all of your news sources are talking about CRT, you need to broaden your watching spectrum. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with who you watch. I'm saying you're not watching enough. So as to Dr. Lensmeyer, we got involved in a situation as a board we shouldn't have gotten involved in. Training for our teachers is an administrative decision. Layton Larson and her staff decide what our teachers get taught, who they get taught by, and we as board members, if you have, as a community member, have a concern, certainly have the option. I've spoken with Misty Job at Education Minnesota, and we are cordially invited as board members to attend all sessions that are done for the teachers, which I intend to do when we do the next in-service session, and frankly, every in-service session after that. Our teachers deserve it, the community deserves it, and we should see what's going on in that room. So we should have never been involved in any way in telling the administration what to do or not to do. And so going forward, I'm going to make the commitment that I'm going to stay the hell out of it and let you guys do what you do. And frankly, if I had anything to say about it, and I don't because I just pulled myself out, I would recommend that we bring Dr. Timothy Lensmeyer back and have him speak to our teachers. And here's why. A lot of what's on his website makes me uncomfortable. A lot of it runs counterintuitive to some things that I believe. But that's the exact reason I think he needs to come talk to us. It's not talking to the kids. This stuff's not going on in the classrooms. This is teachers being taught. And by the way, just because he has critical pedagogy on his website doesn't mean that was what he was coming here to talk about, right? It's like trying to say, and again, these guys are gonna get tired of this example. Let's say we hired Steven Spielberg to come talk to the school district about something. And somebody in the community stood up and said, Jaws is the worst movie ever. I don't want somebody coming in here talking about Jaws. We'd be like, well, he wasn't coming to talk about Jaws. He was gonna talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark. He was gonna talk about Goonies. So maybe we should let the administration do their job. Maybe we should let this guy come in. He's far less controversial in terms of subject matter than previous speakers we've had before, to be quite honest. It's that conflation with the CRT and Lensmeyer that created this hubbub. And what I'm telling you is they're not related. Yes, does he teach that? Yeah, he teaches that, but that's not what he's coming here to talk about. Tim Murtha, Heidi, all of these people did yeoman-like work to work with Dr. Lensmeyer, to look at his program, to look at his material, to look at his content, and to make sure that it was applicable to the population that we have in this area. So I can't decide to bring him back, but I'm fine if he does. I'm fine with whoever they pick, quite honestly, because I'll go there and I'll be your eyes and ears, and if I have an issue, I'll let you know. And then last, one other speaker tonight mentioned that the path to racial reconciliation in this country seemed, in her view, to only be achievable through everyone having Jesus in their heart. So Jews can't be compassionate. Muslims can't be compassionate. See, when we marry those two issues together, that is breaking down the separation of church and state, which, by the way, is not a myth. The Supreme Court ratified it. It really doesn't matter if its origins were a myth. Once the Supreme Court voted, it's no longer a myth. It's the law of the land, and so be it. Thank you very much. I'll yield the floor to my other board members. Thank you for indulging me.
Thanks, Kevin. Who wants to go next? Janet? Do you want to talk?
What is it that what are we trying to accomplish here? I'm not.
We're just talking about the racial equity.
Well, I realize that, but.
So one of the things that's come up is with two new board members, and all the conversation that's going on about equity in our school district, we just need to know, is this being recommitted by the full board now with the new board members that we have? Is it something you want us to modify, to bring forward, for me to work with the chair and vice chair to update? Where would the board like us to go with this? What is the commitment that the board has that you'd like us to bring forward?
Well, with that in mind, I'll just make a comment. We put this in place in January of 2020. We approved many, many policies throughout the year.
Yep.
I don't think we should single this out and treat it any differently than any of our other policies. And I'd like to see progress reports on the 6 or 7 bullet items that we have. And we march forward with it. We set in motion a year ago. And it's another statement, it's another policy. I don't want to see us making another commitment that we're going to review every policy that we have in our books to see how it complies with CRT and equity, and it doesn't make any sense to me. We have this already. Let's report on it. What's progress? What kind of progress are we making?
Well, respectfully, I disagree. I didn't sign that letter.
And you didn't sign a lot of the other policies that we
Understood.
approved.
But this is a framework under which we have to move forward and navigate these situations as a district. And I believe the initial letter to be flawed and missing some components, because I feel that it was in response to the George Floyd situation. And I think we need a broader based piece of language in there that covers more than just the racial element. I want the racial element addressed, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to minimize it. But we have other people out there that need that commitment as well.
And I agree that it was largely because of the George Floyd. Same reason why we're even looking at reviewing it again, is because it's a host of a lot of input.
Obviously, our community has a lot of interest in it based on the number of people that were here, and I agree that there are some changes. I would like to just see a bullet point and take out maybe George Floyd and a bullet point of what we commit to. And I think there is some room for discussion on if we want to add anything or take anything out. I've always felt passionately that the school board should be a part of this and that we should get training too, and that's not in here. I'd like to see that be in here. I just think it's such an important topic that we should probably recommit to this one yearly. And as far as, you know, the one I really like in here, and Lane already read it, but I think everyone in this audience can agree that our purpose is to cultivate a school culture in which brave work, tough conversations, and whole hearts are the expectation to ensure that each and every child feels safe, accepted, heard, and included. And that's a tough job. It's not going to be done in a year. We all have kids. We all know they have their own unique personalities and their own unique issues and blessings. And I just think that we need to continue to look at this. Some of us have had kids that have physical disabilities or mental health difficulties or a host of other difficulties. And we just really need to focus on this. And I think it's important that we're talking about this. I think it's important that we recommit to this and the new board members have a say in what it says.
Jen, I hate to pick on you, but you're the other new board member.
Yeah, yep.
So what do you think
I'm processing.
Kevin versus what Tom's saying?
She's right in the middle.
Baptism by fire.
I grew up in a sibling set of 3, so. This is incredibly important work. It's why I asked, could I please join the Equity Task Force? I'm personally passionate about this work. I agree with a lot of what Kevin said about racial equity is extremely important. I mean, I can see where this came from, and it needed to come before this too, right? But the fact is that we have to start doing the hard work sometime, somewhere, but I want us to do the work and not just write a letter and vote to renew our letter every year, every 3 years, every 5 years. The letter is important, but the work that comes behind the letter is more important. So I guess I don't have Kevin, what you said was wonderful. I'm not picking on you when I say I don't have my speech prepared or notes that I took. I'm more of a doer, as are you. You're right there with me at the board table or the committee table for the Equity Task Force. But I'm a doer and I'm a listener and I'm a learner. So I'm taking notes and I'm listening, I'm learning from people. I don't expect my friends of color and my colleagues of color to lead the way, but I certainly listen and learn. I've been taking in a lot of information from, the sides thing is really difficult. I don't like it. It's falling out that way. But I think it's important. Tonight, I feel like we saw that people from many parts of our community support many different pieces of this conversation that we're having. So I think that's the most important thing. We have to do the work. I'll be honest, we had a equity, our committee. It was a difficult meeting. There were a lot of feelings. People feel a lot of ways about how this whole Dr. Lensmeyer thing went down, about George Floyd being murdered, about all kinds of difficult things that happen in our community. And my biggest regret about how this Dr. Lensmeyer thing went down is I think we made a decision. I think there was a decision that was made that felt like the right one to some people, and that's all right. I'm not here to point fingers, but my fear was that a whole lot of people would be left feeling hurt and alienated, and they were. We have people in our community that are hurt by our decision, and that is hard for me, and we need to make that right. I don't know if I gave you what you were looking for, but we have work to do, and I'm here for the work, so.
It also needs to be stated that, I believe I can speak for the majority, if not the entire board, in that we respect and appreciate the opinions of everybody that spoke tonight, and the values that are reflected in that, and that's okay. That's why they're called opinions. But the idea that it's sides, is an issue, because it'd be fine to pick sides if we really knew what we were defining, but you have all these layers to it, and it feels too convoluted to take sides on. But back to the letter, I still feel like if I was going to force the issue and say that we should re-sign the letter or review it, I feel we should review it because the school board's signing it. I feel we should review it and recommit to it every time a member of this body changes, so that it's kept current with who sits at these tables.
Yeah, and back to the Kevin versus Tom. We review policies all the time. To me, it's about the work that we're doing. So whatever schedule we should be on to revisit this, I'm fine with that, because things do need to evolve and change. Mostly, I think we just need to get to work.
And I think we are doing that. I think you could point out
Yes,
something that we've done on each
absolutely,
of these. So
absolutely.
we are doing work on it.
Absolutely, we could report
We
on
need
these
to
bullets.
keep it moving.
But the other thing I'm also hearing is that our community doesn't really understand what we're doing. So we have to figure out, that's part of this too, how to be more transparent and how to communicate more effectively with our community out there.
Charles?
I guess where I sit is, I probably come from all of this and from a different angle, other than my skin color, cultural background, and experiences and whatnot. But just the fact that I have children in the school district, young children in our school district, and we probably don't have to relook at this letter. Nothing's forcing us. There's no statute to that. We probably don't. But I believe our children, my children, need that audible support and assurance from our board, from this board. And if it means we do it every year, then we do it every year. The bottom line with me is, I think that's important. The children are important. But also with some of the matters that occurred, and I'm not gonna throw out our dirty laundry here, but I feel safe in saying this, that with some matters that occurred in the area of equity, in the area of what's right, the board splintered. And it splintered quickly. Mike Tyson himself said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And that's what happened. And
Can you, I don't know what you're talking about with that, Charles.
because everybody was on board for this equity work, everybody signed this document, but when there began pushback about a situation over Timothy Lensmeyer, the board splintered. The support for this type of work splintered, and it splintered quickly. So that's a tough one to articulate to my kids, is, well, what happened to that letter? What happened to that support that we were promised a year ago? That's my concern. So with that being said, I think the letter is important. I think it allows us to have what we're doing right here, which is one of the bullet pieces, which is having tough conversations. It's a real tough conversation. We all have an affinity for one another on this board, I can honestly say that. But it's a tough conversation because we might have some very different opinions on this and stances. And it's important, again, for my children to model that tough conversation. Not even for my children, but it's important for our faculty and staff that we model that tough conversation around this board table. And then furthermore, it's important for our administration that we model that tough conversation, willing to do that right here, right with that camera on. And I'm so proud that we're here doing that. All of us. When I look back to years ago, when we were trying to decide where to take our kids and where I felt we were as a community or as the ISD 181 to where we are today, we've come a long way. We've had quite the start. So one thing I wanted to share, if you've been around me long enough, and I think most of you have, there's something I wanted to share that's been on my heart. It's it's been about my son Chayton, who's 10, and he's quite the fisherman. I mean, he fished all weekend. We had family over, and every time I look out the house, he'd be on the dock fishing. That's what he did. Came knocking on the door at about 10:30 last night beyond his bedtime with a fish that he wanted to clean. I had to make the decision of, no, we're not going to clean a fish at 10:30 at night. You need to go to bed. But he loves his fishing. So a couple years ago, or a couple weeks ago, Chayton and I began a process that's become a yearly process for us now through our church. We and a few other churches in the community, my son and I take part in a bass league. And at that bass league, it's a part of what I bring to the table in terms of my love of Christ. And it gives us that opportunity to plug into people with that mindset that's important to us. And Chayton was so excited about it. And things being the way they are with busyness of schedule and that sort of thing, I didn't get to my boat until the evening of the bass league. Not to mention it was about 100 degrees or 95 degrees when I finally decided I would rip off the cover of the boat and fire it up. It ran pretty well when I put it away, right? So why wouldn't the boat run well this spring? But I told Chayton there might be a few hiccups along the way, but it's our goal to make it to the bass league that night. And well, what happened was we got invaded in that boat with a bunch of mice. So so the likelihood of us taking part in that bass league was starting to go dwindle quite quickly. And then we saw a couple of mice in a live well, and it was a mother and its babies or whatnot. And what Chayton decided to do was we wanted to give the babies the mouse a chance to get the babies out of the boat, right? So it's pretty creepy. But anyway, it was important to him. So we did that. Went inside, had water for about 5 minutes, came back. The end of my story is that it was such an important night for Chayton. He wanted to fish so bad to go in that league because he thought he could win the biggest bass that night. But in the end, as the clock continued to tick, it wasn't going to be possible for us. He had to vacuum out all the left behinds of the mice and clean things out. And at one point, I said, Chayton, I don't think we're going to be able to go tonight. And it was really difficult for him. But he said, Dad, he said, this is quite the start, though. And I'm sure we'll be back next week to fish. And we were. But it's important to him. Those things, as minor as getting a line wet, was so important to my son. And I can't help but think, as it relates to this particular letter, signing it again, as well as the equity work that we do, where I can honestly say where we're at right now is we're at a good start. We've been punched in the nose. We have some good ideas. We know where the community is all across the board, but we have a good start going here. And I'd love to articulate that support of what we're doing through this letter.
Thank you. I also support this. It's important that we move in the right direction, and there really isn't anything I could add tonight that hasn't already been said. So much was said so eloquently, and thank you for that. So, what would the board like to do here?
I guess I'd like to see the administration take a crack at updating the letter.
Okay.
I think Ruth stated it probably the best on what we would like to see included in there, and give us something that we'd be proud to sign. So the one thing I did forget to say tonight was that I have to apologize to the community one more time. I forgot in the beginning of this whole thing for a little while the first lesson my mother ever taught me. And that's, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And it's not always easy, but right is right. So I would love to see an updated version of it that I would be proud to sign.
I like the idea of having administration freshen up the letter. But I also don't want to forget what Ruth has said, and is in my notes here as well, about the educating of others. Not in terms of, I need to educate you on what this is because you're wrong, but then to be willing as a school district to be a leader in this area for our community. And I'm not sure what that looks like, but as much as this is of an importance to our children, which it is, but I think it's really important that we do our best to get everybody at the table and understanding what we're talking about, because I think there's a bit of a chasm there in terms of, or a gap in terms of what that is. And I think that was articulated here tonight, that there's some people that I really don't think they understand where we're at. I'm not saying that we let our foot off the gas, but I think that we need to continue to, to tweak our lens here of that, hey, there's some people that aren't necessarily on the same page here. Can we play a role in educating that as well? And I'm not sure how to get there, but I think that's important as well. We're a school district here to educate, and it just makes sense to do our best to educate the community as well within reason.
Well, I just say I'm proud of you as board members. Wow, this was a great conversation, and the board has really matured here, and I'm just really proud of the direction that we're going. So I guess our direction to administration would be to rewrite this based on some of the comments tonight.
Great. I'd like to add a couple of things too, if that's okay. And I agree. I just think this conversation has been beautiful, and so it's really wonderful to be having it at the board table publicly and understanding that there's a lot of different points of view, and to be willing to do this hard work. And so I commend you on that. This past week as well, we talked about Dr. Lensmeyer and that it splintered quite quickly. And, part of it, and I'm not going to make excuses for COVID or anything like that, but some of it is that, and I will take responsibility as the superintendent, that maybe we didn't have everybody ready to even understanding what he was going to talk about and so on. And so it brought forth a lot of confusion. And we talked about that at the equity team. We also talked it at the administrative level, and we said, before we move forward with something like this, we need to know where one another are, what some of our preconceived understandings are, and how to move forward together. And this past week, as I said, we had just an incredible leadership conference where I see smiles in the back table from the administrative team, because our entire administrative team went and took part in the work with Sourcewell. And we got about a day and a half where we got to just talk about what are some of the goals that we have as a leadership within the school district, and how can we help move this forward. And if we were going to look at this letter, what would we recommend be on it? And so I'd like to just share a few of the additional things that our administrative team thinks that they would like us to commit to. One is the professional development, but specifying that, yes, we're going to include the Board of Education in this as well. And Ruth, you eloquently talked about that, so that's brought up, so that we're all trying to learn from one another. Because none of us, like I told my friend, we don't know how to lead this effort, but we're going to certainly try to learn together as we move forward. But also, Tim Murtha, our Director of Curriculum and Assessment, cannot do all of this work alone. And if we're going to make a commitment to this, we have to figure out a way that we can support him and Heidi and the rest of the administrative team in looking at what we do as a district and our policies, our procedures, and so on from that equity lens. And so I think that we need to commit, and that's up to Marcy and me to figure out how are we going to pay for it. But we need to figure out how we can support us, someone who will overlook our student support services like our Title I programs and all of the programs that we have in our district, but also look at it through an equity lens. We also felt at the meeting that we had with our administrative team that one of the things we really pride ourselves in is that we try to be great communicators. And we know that this past year we've done our best, but we probably could have been better. But we talked about it at this leadership conference about what a good job when we were talking about the referendum that we did with communicating our message and putting it out there for everybody to see and having that transparent lens. And why don't we do that on our website as well? And to maybe come back and report periodically on how we're doing on our bullets so that we are making sure. You know, we talked about the fact that you do these, you know, every time we have a meeting or whatever, you talk about it at the board level, but we can do a better job to help support that. And finally, we would like also to add, if we're redoing this letter, and if you want us to, is that we've got some really great policies in this district. Policy 606, for instance. And in that policy, it says that we're going to provide resources that will support the state standards, and they will enrich the curriculum to reflect all racial, ethnic, cultural, age, gender, and ability diversities. And that's right in our policy, and I think that we need to make that commitment again. I know we already have it, but it's like in two separate documents. And so those were the conversations that we had as an administrative team, and that if you're okay with it, I would like to work with Bob and Ruth and some administrative team members just to bring forth the letter that talks about some of those items. But I don't want to add it without you thinking too that it needs to be in the letter.
Okay. Anything else?
One last tiny thing. I know
Okay.
overused my time, but it is utterly critical that as we undertake the equity work that we double our efforts, redouble our efforts, and then look at them and double them again to create transparency on what we're doing. Yeah. We're asking the community to trust us, and I'm a trust but verify guy. And so they deserve insight and line of sight into what we're working on. Okay. So we need to keep that top of mind. I realize that it's not usually deliberate when we don't have that transparency, but it's a byproduct of having 1,000 things flying at you every second, right? I think unfortunately it gets interpreted in the community as though things are being done behind a curtain, but that's not the intent usually.
I go by, in my life, there's always different signs along the way, and I believe that for me that typically it's of the Lord, and but it's really fun for me. I'll admit that Doug pointed out earlier, and that I've been looking at the whole evening is a part of how I live my life, which is love each other deeply, and that's the one thing that we're called to do as believers. Those of us that are believers in Christ is to love one another. And it's really through that lens that I believe that's where this work is truly coming from. And at least through my lens. And that's important. And finally, another important thing that I feel is really important to share as it relates to that is that in my life, I believe that the one thing the only thing that should repel people from me is my love of Christ. And all else of what I should do is demonstrate what Doug, which I appreciate him sharing right there, is love. And one way or the other, we need to get there with that understanding and have that be a shared understanding of where we're headed here. And I'm not sure how we'll get there through education, and through conversation and through tough conversations, but I believe that we'll get there.
Thank you, everyone. Let's move on in the agenda. Tim Murtha is going to speak on curriculum leadership training.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Nystrom. I've been asked to speak tonight to just a couple of issues as part of just a general update. In the summer, we don't do a whole lot of curriculum work. But where we're at in terms of leadership training, in fulfillment of the board's response to the APAC vote of non-concurrence, the school board has agreed to participate in the same professional learning that the teachers have already undergone. And so I'm looking for guidance in the manner and structure in which you wish that opportunity to occur. Being mindful that if all six of you are present at once, then we have an open meeting. And so are we doing this as a board meeting? Are we doing it as a special meeting work session, or are we splitting the board up 3 and 3 and doing it under separate venue? So I'm just going to look for a little guidance from you on that. You can just reach out to Superintendent Larson and myself with a response as you think through that. You don't have to make a decision tonight. I'm also here to extend to you an invitation to participate in observing the Continuous Improvement Retreat on August 10th and 11th. This is that opportunity for the district to review its student achievement data in all the many forms that it occurs, and also for the staff to see, the first look for the staff to see the district staff development plan, and then make their own site improvement plans based on aligning with those goals. So that'll be August 10th and 11th. If you are planning to attend, please let me know and let me help coordinate, the number of you that are attending at a given time over the 2 days to make sure that we're not in violation of open meeting law. And
can you send out an email on?
Absolutely. And lastly, the district staff development plan is going to have 2 primary focus areas for this upcoming year, and one is going to be the work on RTI and MTSS, our response to intervention and our multi-tiered system of support for all students. This is a product of the work that the admin team did at the admin retreat last week. So they made the agreement that this is what they chose to work on. In addition to that, they want to work on social emotional learning as a curriculum and a framework that exists in all our schools to make sure that we're addressing the challenges of rebuilding the systems that were damaged by COVID and distance learning, and as we all know that they were. Okay, it was said here and spoken to it. So those are the 3 things I've been asked to be here to summarize for you and invite.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next, we have the Equity Task Force report from Charles Blacklots.
All right, thank you. And I'll try to be as brief as possible here. Have a few notes. It's important that on this particular task force that I try my best to articulate where we've come as a task force, but probably more importantly as it relates to the last meeting. I've done a number of different updates for you all, but basically, one thing that's important to share as part of the Equity Task Force is that this comes as part of our continuous improvement plan for the school district. That's where we're in large part centered. And then also, it's important to know that our Equity Task Force is a resource to the district. To schools, to the staff, and to our students as well. And basically, we are a place where ideas can be brought and discussed, and where we can get feedback on those ideas as well. And also, more importantly, be a resource to our school district. And then one thing that's probably important to share as well is we're not a policy-making body. That's us, the board. not the Equity Task Force, though the Equity Task Force is charged with doing a lot of important work, which we talked about earlier. So it's really important that, that the board, you all understand that piece, that that's where we're at, and that's where generally we see ourselves. Just a few other matters with the last board meeting, really working to calibrate ourselves still as a group for those members that are on this task force. This was a meeting where we brought in new individuals into the group, which are our fellow board members, which Lane had mentioned earlier. So that's significant. But also it gave us an opportunity to kind of look back in that mirror in terms of, well, who are we again? Where are we headed? And what is our mission? And really, we're not there yet. We don't have that perfect mission yet. We're still working as a team, and we're still trying to get there. And there's a lot of different individuals that make up that group. But I'm confident that we're going to get there, because it's a group that's wanting to make a difference for our students, and I'm really excited about that. So, in a nutshell, that's what we covered at this last meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to segue into the APAC
Absolutely.
task force?
Yes, and that is probably the more senior group as it relates within the school district, and as it relates to the type of matters that we've discussed here tonight. The American Indian Parent Advisory Committee is a group that's been together for a number of years, and it comes out of statute that due to the amount of Indigenous students that we have in our school district, then we are able to receive a number of dollars from the state. And as part of that, and our responsibility for that is statute that we must have an American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. I just wanted to share that with all of you to be clear on that, but also to our constituents and students and families, that's why the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee is there. It's a very significant group. And with that in mind, they've been getting a lot of work done. And I was so excited to be started a part of that, to be at its onset years ago, before I was even on the board, but to see where the board has, or that advisory committee has come and how it's evolved and matured, I'm quite pleased with. And I'm quite honored to have been associated and be associated with it. But we also are in the process of adding another member to that group. Ruth has been kind enough to step up and to be a part of that group. And I'm so excited to have Ruth there. So, so Ruth and I will be the ones that'll be joining that group on as consistent basis as we can, but also as we're welcomed as well. So with that, there's a few things that were covered at the last meeting, and that was that Tim Murtha was able to share some data and have a data conversation with the group. And that's a yeoman's effort right there on both sides to try to understand and try to contextualize the information and the data that's out there. And to begin this partnership that we started, kind of restarted again this spring as a board with the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. And so it's fun to be a part of that, fun to see that, fun to see that effort, and the growth again of that committee. We also discussed the importance of the coordinator position, and the recommendation to make that a full-time position, and to fill a vacant position of the student liaison as well. So, and then also finally, they discussed recommendations for consideration for the upcoming continuous improvement plan as well. So part of their role is to be able to articulate some thoughts and provide a certain amount of advisement as it relates to that. And this group takes that very seriously and is moving forward with that. And so I was pleased to have Tim there, and I think Heidi was there as well, so to be able to hear some of that also. But finally, that group is here to advocate for and support our school district and our students as well. And they do a wonderful job. And I'm so pleased again, to be a part of that.
Thanks, Charles. Any questions of Charles?
Oh, I do know that they do plan on coming back to the board and presenting as well.
July 19th.
Yeah, on July 19th, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is the business services report. Marcy Lord.
Right, I will keep this brief. The financial report's in your packet. There's nothing really to note on there. I just want to note that there's no financial report in July because June I won't present that until we have it audited numbers. And then the LTFM plan will be coming next month. And then with the legislature, I covered on, with the budget that they gave us 2.45 next year, 2% the following year. And then they did appropriate more money for special ed cross subsidy. I don't know what that means specifically to our district yet. I'm sure there'll be some runs coming out in the future that I would know that. And then English learner aid, they also set aside additional money for that. They're going to continue the voluntary pre-kindergarten. And there's going to be increases in local optional aid. And then also there's a lot of grants that are going to be coming out for growing your own and language essentials. So all good stuff. It's all good. I'm glad that they finally came to an agreement.
Have they signed it yet? Have you heard?
I have not heard if they have signed it.
Okay. Not tomorrow? No, Thursday's the deadline, right? Yeah.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Next, we have the superintendent's report.
All right. What a great meeting. I'm one of those people that thinks that a great meeting is done in an hour and a half, and this one has been over 3 hours, and it's just been powerful from the minute we started tonight until till the point we're at. And so what a productive time together. We've really hit on most of the things that I have highlighted in here. I just want to wish everyone a very happy 4th of July and hope that everyone has a really fun time. Just be advised that the offices will be closed on Monday because people will be still celebrating the holiday. Also, with the school board meeting that got moved to the 19th, remember that now is a special board meeting rather than a regular board meeting. And so project oversight team will be the Tuesday before that meeting, which has been moved to the 13th at 8 o'clock, so that we can prepare and present anything that needs to come for board action at that meeting. I also, again, want to thank Heidi and thank Tim for just outstanding work with the leadership conference last week. I just feel like we just got such a great direction. And it feels like things are kind of back to the way it used to be, where we get to start talking about closing the achievement gap and how are we going to meet the needs of our kids. And it's just so much fun to be having these conversations. But we've got a lot of work to do. And we've got a lot of data to look at. And so I'm going to end today by inviting the board to come to the CIP training on August 10th and 11th. And Tim will be sending some of that out on that. But we'd love to have you come and see some of the work that the data that we're looking at from a district perspective. And then how the buildings and the principals lead that effort in each of their buildings to make sure that they're meeting both the building goals and the district goals. So with that, that's all I have tonight.
Lane, could you explain for the audience what CIP means?
Continuous improvement process. So when we are looking at our plan or looking at our data, where we're at and how do we continuously improve and get better results and to meet the needs of all of our learners. And so great work. And our principals are ready to lead the effort in each of their buildings as well as the instructional leaders in their buildings. And so it's going to be exciting. So yeah, great question. Yep.
Thanks for your report.
Yep.
Finally, we have a school board report by myself and Ruth.
I think you want me to review it. Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you all received a packet today, and it's for our superintendent evaluation. And if you can believe, it's been 3 years since the last time we did one. And Lane is entering her last year of her contract, and we're hopeful she's going to want to stay with us for a little longer, so we need to do an evaluation. So it's in your packet. It's the same one we did as 3 years ago. So for those of you that were here, you'll be familiar with it. And I'm hopeful that the timeline will work out, that you can all have it returned here by the next meeting, July 19th. And then Janet will have some time to take it and compile the information. And I think the administrative team is also going to be filling these out. And then we will go in a closed session after our August 9th meeting for Lane's review and report out to the public on August 23rd. So that's the timeline that we're looking at. And yeah, any questions for anyone?
Can we get an electronic version instead of the old-fashioned paper way, or?
We talked about that,
Was
but
that an electronic version?
Yeah, would you like one?
Yeah,
I would.
good idea.
Yeah.
Like that.
Perfect. Good.
Okay, wonderful. So that's good.
So is the 3 years, is that's typical?
Yeah.
So this is anything?
Superintendents, the maximum that you can have a contract for is 3 years. And so I'm just starting my last year of my contract, so.
And if you had a new superintendent that was less experienced than Lane, I was gonna say younger.
At least you didn't say old.
You might wanna do one, every year for a while, but yeah.
Yeah. And our hope is, if the review is positive, that we can start into contract negotiations
Perfect.
with Lane. Okay.
My last contract.
Okay.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
Okay, future meetings are listed.
Never know, yeah.
Yeah, so if you could look at that. Is there any other business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
You need a second?
Motion by Director Blackline, second by Director Nelson to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion passes. Meeting adjourned.